And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right. Happy New Year. Greetings and a good afternoon, and welcome back. And welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours as Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the all-new JB and Goldwater app, and also at jbandgoldwatershow.com. Darren is to the right of your screen. I am to the left. If you're watching, if you're listening, you don't have to worry about that. But we're here until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Darren, Jamie, Nicole Auerbach will join us from The Athletic at 12:10. We've got Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central at 1 o'clock. We've got Reggie Merriweather with Clemson at 2 o'clock, and a whole lot more between all of those guests here in an extended version on January the 4th. 843-321-8893. That's our phone number. It's also our text line, and you can fire that up and send it right in. Follow us on social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, and individually at Sports Radio JB and at Darren Goldwater, which, by the way, you still look like a brick on this screen. I just noticed that.
Do I really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of strange.
I'm a brick, huh?
Unless just your shirt.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know what happened here, but
I mean, I have an idea of what's happening. I'm just trying to fix what's happening.
We'll let you work through the kinks, and this is what happens when you take 2 weeks off.
That's exactly what
spend
happens
time with your family around here. But that's all right. No big deal. Hopefully we still sound good to all of you. Thank you. We've already received some messages today. Folks, excited that we're back, but we're excited to be back with you. First and foremost, I hope everybody had a wonderful and very Merry Christmas and had a fantastic and happy New Year. I know I did. I know you did. I'm saying what I said before we went to break. I've never met somebody who came back from the holiday break and said, well, I didn't eat enough, because it's just not true. We ate too much and drank too much and things like that. And so now we're trying to lose the weight as we get back into the grind here.
Yeah. We'll see how that comes along. But I fixed the bricks, so that's good.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
In our time off, I learned how to become a master chef with the air fryer.
Oh,
I
great,
have been dominating. I don't think I've bought food since I got the air fryer. I haven't cooked it all.
My wife mentioned that to me. She said she's been giving me a daily update. I guess you've been posting stuff. I don't ever see it.
I have
on I don't know where, Facebook or something.
Yeah, I've been posting it.
Okay. So what all have you been making?
It's real good. So wings, a bloomin' onion, which tastes like perfect.
Wow.
Let's see. What else have I made? I've made tons of stuff. Sandwiches I've made in there. I've made chicken fajitas in the air fryer. Reheating pizza, I think, might be what the whole thing is made for. It's perfect.
Okay.
You get pizza, you put it in the fridge, and then you always try to figure out the best way to reheat the pizza. Air fryer.
Wow.
I promise you, it'll change your life.
Okay.
It will.
Did not know that.
It will.
Well,
you can thank me later.
That was your big Christmas gift.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. That's great. Well, maybe we'll get one of those for, I don't know.
I'd recommend it
some point in time down the road. I will say, to brag a little bit on Carrie, we had a great Christmas, and I had a bunch of stuff framed. I didn't even know she had snuck out of my office.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Two printouts of the front page of the state newspaper when South Carolina went to the Final Four.
Yep.
She had like box framed.
That's awesome.
She also had the printout, which these are like copies, like poster copies is what they are, of when we won the national championship in 2010. I texted Jay Brown. I said, look, man, you and Jackie are on my wall now.
Nice.
That was cool. And then a bunch of stuff from the old Outback Bowls in 2000 and 2001. I was at both of them in Tampa, and those got framed as well. I've been wanting to frame those for 20 years, and she got that stuff framed. So it was great. Family, we literally had people at our house from December 19th and still until New Year's Eve. Like January 1st, we were looking around like, what do we do? Like, nobody's here. We had family in town and everything. So it was good, but we're happy to be back. A lot of stuff to get to in the coaching industry as well. Nicole Auerbach with The Athletic, senior writer for The Athletic, is going to join us in less than 5 minutes. Sure, want to be here for that conversation. Obviously, a lot of that conversation is going to have to do with the college football playoff and what happened over the weekend there with Clemson, being blown out by Ohio State, Notre Dame being blown out by Alabama. Probably rehash a lot of our playoff expansion talk today. We've got 3 hours to do it, and we should. I now look at this and say, this is a joke. I mean, this is just a joke, what we're going through here. And it's not a joke because they can't, quote, get the 4 best teams in the playoff. I think what we just saw is the 4 best teams in football, I think. And we'll get Nicole's opinion on that as well. But I think this thing needs to be expanded even beyond 8. I've said for a while 16, and the reason is I'd rather see 15 games that matter in December than 3, number one. And number two, I'd rather see the teams that qualified to get there and the hottest teams get there. That's what makes for a great postseason. I mean, you look at Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, and looking college basketball, Darren, college baseball, these tournaments, these playoffs, what makes them special is that there are teams that qualify because they do win their championships. If you're in professional sports, you win your division or whatever it is, and then you qualify for the playoff. And if you're in college, you win your conference championship and you qualify for the postseason. But that doesn't always mean that you're one of the best teams necessarily. It just means that you qualify for the postseason. And then to get the rest of them in there in college, they select at-large bids. And generally, if you're an at-large bid, you're one of the hotter teams in the country because you got an at-large somehow. I mean, you're playing really well, but you just didn't win a championship. That's not the case in pro football, baseball, or basketball, but some of those teams that win those divisions, like in pro football, and you're like, how did an 8-8 New York Giants team at one point in time, win the division and then win the Super Bowl? They got hot at the right time. So it's a great mix. So why in college football can we not find a way to expand this thing, get a bunch of games that matter where there's going to be not any opt-outs and stuff like that, and then you have a bunch of qualifiers and you have a bunch of hot teams? That's what makes for a great postseason, being able to maybe see an upset or two and things like that. So we're going to talk a lot about that.
I think 16 is significantly too much. One of the arguments that I don't agree with is, well, you go to 16, there are going to be too many blowouts. Like, we see blowouts all the time.
Right.
We just saw it again.
Yep.
So I do believe the best 4 teams were there. The hottest temes, no, they certainly were not in there.
Oklahoma, A&M. Hey, well, by the way, that A&M game, I mean, and that's my point. Like, had North Carolina not had 4,000 yards and 41 touchdowns opt out, that game could have been entirely different. Why would we have not wanted to see North Carolina and A&M in an expanded 16-team playoff where these guys aren't opting out? That's my point.
Yeah, and they wouldn't opt out if the games meant more. I mean, because we're going to see this opt-out thing became the word this year, but we've already seen it for the last couple of years, guys deciding to forego the bowl game in preparation for the NFL draft. That's not going away, except for the bowls that actually do matter. I just think 16 it's just too much, because if you go to 16, there are teams in there that don't deserve to be in. They haven't done enough to qualify to be in. So I think this year showed us there has to be more, because the regular season has to start mattering again, because right now it doesn't.
It doesn't.
No, not
You're
at
right.
all.
If you lose in September, I know you got to call Nicole, but if you lose in September right now, the rest of the season kind of doesn't matter to a lot of teams. It just doesn't matter. It's like, okay, well, we're going to fight in and out every week, and then we're going to get to a bowl game, and all of our best players might be opting out for that bowl game. And that to me is hurting the sport. This is not helping the sport at all.
No,
it's killing it.
Right, because if the regular season isn't mattering, that's all we've been striving for, right, is to make the regular season matter a little bit more. Right? So expanding the playoffs now actually makes it matter more as opposed to kind of watering down. But I think 16 is just a little bit too much.
Yeah, no doubt. Nicole Auerbach probably knows more than Darren and I combined on this issue and others. She's a senior writer with The Athletic, and she has been kind enough to fit us into her busy schedule here at 12:10 on this Monday afternoon. Nicole, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, we're already arguing. We've been off for almost 2 weeks, and we're bitching back and forth about expanding the college football playoff. So happy New Year, right?
Happy New Year.
Exactly. Here we are. Let the arguments re-engage themselves, no doubt. Well, first of all, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. You're one of the best out there. We quote you often around here on our program, and it's excellent stuff as always. First question, though, after watching the college football playoff, Nicole, does the committee maybe deserve a little bit more credit now than what they had received before with the 4 teams that they had in the college football playoff? I know it was 2 blowouts, but were those the best 4 teams in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the criticism that they were getting was largely below the 4th spot. So I think you can still argue about plenty of things. But I do think that the critics of Ohio State's positioning certainly did see what the committee was seeing, maybe in a different way, or maybe it took them longer to get there. Maybe they still don't like that they've played, half as many games as the team that they're going to play in the national championship. But you did see why the committee felt that this is one of the 4 best teams in the country. And I think that that's one thing for the various frustrations we have during the college football playoff era. I don't think we're feeling like the best team in the country is not playing in one of those 4 spots. I know we've had blowouts. I know we've had a number of years where it looks like there's only 2 good teams, or maybe 3 this year. But at least, having 3 and the fact that the 3rd ranked team wins and gets to the championship game and clearly is a better team than the 2nd one, that is something that we needed, because in the old system, you still only had the top 2 teams playing. So again, for all the different frustrations, that element has worked. The best teams have played for a national championship.
And we're going to come back to the national championship here in a moment. I think it will be special when they play the game next week, Nicole. But how do we, in your opinion, how do we make this better? I know I was just referencing with Darren a moment ago all of the playoff systems that we have in sport in this country, from professional football, Major League Baseball, in the NBA, and then when you come to the college hockey, you come to the college ranks, and you've got the college basketball tournament, you got March Madness, you got the college baseball tournament, which they've done an excellent job with for so long. But one of the things that all those encompass is they have the best teams in the sport. I know they're much larger. They have the best teams in the sport, and they have the hottest teams in the sport. How can we get that in college football?
Well, I mean, the answer is to expand. I mean, I think if you look at the bowl system and you say, the bowl season we just had, and you say, wow, Oklahoma really got better. They were a young team with a young quarterback, and they got better throughout the season, and they were really hot at the end. Well, the way to get that team in is if you're an 8-team playoff, they're going to have a spot, and maybe they don't have a super high ranking because they have, those losses on their schedules, and they should matter, but they're in. And I think when you think about the fact that these semifinals so often have not been competitive, I think that's one area where if you do support expansion, you can channel your energy, because I think if you go to 8 and, the teams that we're talking about 5 through 8, a lot of those teams are probably going to be hot, right? They're probably teams that had an early loss and have overcome it, right? And have convinced us that they've gotten better throughout the season and, or won a conference championship and boosted their resume at the end of the year. So I think you would get those at-large spots. You would get the teams that are hotter at the end of the season. And again, maybe you get to this year, maybe you still end up with an Alabama-Ohio State championship game, but maybe it's more interesting along the way. And maybe the quarterfinals lead to better teams in the semifinals that are playing better. And therefore, the semifinal games are more competitive. Again, even if you get to the same destination, I think the goal needs to be more interesting, more engaging along the way.
Nicole Auerbach, senior writer with The Athletic, one of the finest we have here covering college football in America. Do you think that this 4-team playoff, Nicole, has devalued the regular season in college football?
I mean, I do. I think that we used to be in a world where we paid more attention to every conference race. And now, the Pac-12, if Oregon loses to Auburn in week 1, we dismiss them from the playoff picture, don't even pay attention the rest of the way. And I think, you have that happening on a smaller scale in all of these other leagues, the ones that we dismiss early in the season based on non-conference results. And, I think that you don't have, okay, here, for example, Iowa had a really good season. They had a shortened season, obviously. They lost the first 2 games by a combined total of 5 points, and then they won everything else. And they were playing really great football at the end of the season. That is a successful season. And it doesn't feel successful because in the playoff prism that we view the sport, we don't have space for successful seasons that don't end in the playoff. There are teams making New Year's Six bowls that, we're acting like they're failures of a season because they didn't make the playoff. That stuff didn't used to happen. It still mattered to make the Rose Bowl or the Sugar Bowl. And you could still have a successful season with 9 or 10 wins because it was growth. And now we really don't, as a collective, allow those to happen because we're so obsessed with the playoff and the prism by which we view success that, I mean, think about it with Oklahoma. They made the playoff a bunch of times, but they get blown out. So it's not even that's successful for them, right? And that's wrong. That's the part where I don't think everyone could have anticipated. And again, maybe if you had more of a variety of teams making the playoff and it wasn't dominated by the same 3, 4, 5 teams this whole 7 years that it's been here, maybe that's different. But I do think that was an unintended side effect of this, that it would be so dismissive to everyone that's not in that 6 to 8 team range of teams that realistically have a shot.
I guess then the alternative to that would be Cincinnati, right? Because the way they played against Georgia, you could almost say even with the loss that maybe even validates their season. But is it enough for a group of 5 to say be warranted a spot if the playoffs expand to 8?
I mean, I think they should. Yeah, I would really, I'd be on the camp to advocate for that. And I think that there would be a lot of public support for that. I feel like this year, because you had Cincinnati and Coastal, you had 2 teams in different leagues. It wasn't UCF because I don't think the sympathy existed for UCF. I think we all knew they were a good team, but I think people were kind of mocking the national championship, the way they talked about stuff, rubbed people the wrong way. And this year you had Luke Fickell as kind of the face of that, just a very no-nonsense, quiet guy. And his team made the case on the field. And I think that it certainly showed that it was frustrating to large swaths of this audience of this sport that they didn't even have a chance. That it wasn't even the final day. The argument wasn't Notre Dame versus Cincinnati. That wasn't even close enough to being a conversation. So I think there would be a lot of sympathy and a lot of hope for that. And I think if you have a designated group of 5 spot, you also engage 5 different leagues that otherwise right now when they start the season don't think that their champion has a chance to play for a national championship. And I think it's fine if that group of 5 spot is usually the 8th seed playing the 1. I mean, I think Cincinnati would certainly have felt better about their season ending, with a chance to play Alabama than to just be told that Florida and, all these other teams were better than them.
Nicole, yeah, and look, I totally agree with you. I mean, the point of this playoff right now, we hear oftentimes things, okay, well, conference championships matter. Well, okay, they matter to conferences that people think are better than other conferences. I mean, that's when conference championships matter. Like the conference championship matters in the SEC because it's one of the best leagues in the country constantly, if not the best league every year. So if you go to an 8 team or beyond that, how much emphasis do we put on something like conference championships? Is that an AQ? Are you an AQ because you won your conference title, or is it still about just getting the best 8 teams in there?
Well, I think the AQ part helps the regular season because again, if the Pac-12 champion has a designated spot, then we all engage with the Pac-12 throughout the season. Then the conference race matters, even if the league is a little bit down that year, right? Like, I think people are like, oh, well, what if you get, you know, a 7-5 conference champion? I guess it would be like 8-5 conference champion. I mean, first of all, the NFL has teams with losing records win divisions, right? Like we've had, like, it happens. Sometimes certain leagues are down, but the NFL doesn't take away the spot of that team. You know, they just seed them the way that that's affected. And I think you can do that. But again, it keeps people engaged throughout the season. You know, people are playing towards something. Their fan bases are engaged. The rest of us are engaged with things that are happening in other parts of the country. So I think the AQ solves that problem of the engagement issue throughout the regular season.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I really am. Nicole Auerbach joining us, senior writer with theathletic.com. She covers this as well as anybody out there. I'm with you on that, because if you drop a game early in the year, or it doesn't matter, you drop a game or two, who cares how many games you lose? If you are able to win the conference, it takes the debate out of which conference is better. Should this team be rewarded because they lost 2 games in the SEC versus this one who only lost 1 in the Pac-12, but the Pac-12 isn't as good? You know, it's a jumbled mess for me to sit here and say, but that's what we have right now. We have a jumbled mess, and it leaves it to a committee and leaves it to public speculation about what league is better. That's where they go with these conversations. So if you can eliminate that and you bring in the AQ and you give everybody something to fight for, I certainly think that that's worthy. I think, though, right now, like, kind of piling on what you said a few moments ago, how it has devalued some of the regular season. Right now, we have 3 games that truly matter, Nicole, in the postseason. We have the 2 semifinals and then the national championship game. Well, I know that there are other games that matter to teams individually, but for instance, North Carolina had 4,000 yards opt out of a huge Orange Bowl matchup with A&M and 41 touchdowns. 41 so obviously this opt-out thing is not going away.
Right.
So is it plausible to even discuss going beyond 8 to make more games matter in December, in January? I get it. You might look at it right now and say, well, okay, BYU was 16, Alabama was 1. That would be a blowout. Clemson at 2 and Iowa at 15. That'd be a blowout. But it might be, but the game matters. Like, is that even plausible to discuss?
Well, I mean, I've been, talking to a lot of different people. I'm going to have a story out later this week about kind of the state of the playoff system. And, people have mentioned 16 and that the 10 FBS leagues have qualifiers, and, you really engage everybody like the NCAA tournament does. Like, every league gets an AQ in the NCAA tournament. We watch 16 versus 1 games in the NCAA tournament every single year, even though we think we know what's going to happen, for that one chance it's UMBC.
There you go.
And we watch 2 15s, which we almost always know how those are going to end, right? So again, I think the way the conversation has shifted this year, I think with the frustrations of how everything went down and the way the committee, attempted to justify things, I think the conversation shifted from like, oh, what about UCF or Cincinnati, to what about access? Like, why don't people have access and just actually play it on the field? Because that's how other playoff systems work. So that's what I think is interesting coming out of this season, is that the conversation has kind of shifted to that. And that is a question of fairness versus, did you think the 4th team was better than the 15th?
Yeah, that's great. And per fairness, let me ask you, like, I'm a believer that if we expand the play, no matter what it goes to, 6, 8, 12, 16, whatever, I don't think it should be 60. How much was the basketball tournament?
68 now.
Yeah. No, thanks. But no matter what you expand it to, I do think there needs to be something that comes with that, in my opinion, Nicole. And I think that's scheduling. I think that schedules need to be more in line, like leagues get, like, you can't have the Pac-12 playing 9 and the SEC playing. I'm an SEC guy, and I think they should play more games in the league. I kind of threw out this model not too long ago to Darren, Nicole. I said, look, they should do a 9-game league schedule. You should have to schedule 1 group of 5. You should have to schedule 1 Power 5. That gets you to 11, and then you've got a flex game there. That flex game can be a Power 5 or a G5. And if it's an FCS opponent, you have to have league approval to be able to do that, a good reason as to why. And then you try to balance out the scheduling. And that's not always going to be fair, because teams are going to be better than others and things like that. I get that. But at least on paper, you'll say, well, everybody played a certain number of league games. Everybody played a certain number of Power 5 and G5 games, and that gives you a little bit better of an eye to look at these things when you're trying to figure out the analytics and stuff like that on paper, is what teams deserve to be in there that aren't AQs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, I think that the idea of having at-large spots is something. Yes, the SEC is going to get multiple teams in, right? Every year, they'll have a good chance to get 3 in, whatever it is. But I do think the idea of having at-large spots incentivizes better scheduling. And I think, you've even had people kind of address that with some of the late 2020s schedules, games, some of these big home and homes, because I think people are thinking, hey, even if I go out and play, if I'm, Georgia and I go out and play USC, and let's assume USC is better than they've been, that I'm going to get credit for scheduling that. Kind of like basketball, right? Like in a normal year, the basketball selection committee takes into account how you schedule the part of the schedule you control. And so, you get credit even if you go on the road to a hostile environment against a good team and you lose. You still get credit for scheduling that game. And so I think if you expand and you go to a model now where we are not, terrified to include a 2-loss team and, really nitpicking that, what people's 1 loss or 2 loss is, and you allow them to schedule these games, get some credit for them, that's incentivized by it not being held against these teams. And then, you eventually have some of these teams make it as at larges. That's going to change the way other people schedule. Instead of trying to schedule to avoid losses, they'll be willing to schedule one of those games. If a team does 2 of them, wins 1, loses 1, and it doesn't knock them out of playoff contention, then more teams will schedule that way. So I think that's another benefit of the at-large system, is because you don't have to be perfect if you expand out. Right now, you still have to be basically perfect. And we still haven't, unless I'm wrong. Did we change this year? Did anyone have 2 losses? No. So we haven't had a 2-loss team make the playoffs still, if I'm correct on that. So again, it's like you have to give people that wiggle room. And so I think if you go to 8 and you have at large spots that you can point to these things, the committee would have to incentivize it as well, and not immediately knock these teams out of contention. But you could do that, and that would really help the regular season as well.
That's a great point.
So part of me feels like, we come to this conversation of expanding the playoffs virtually every year throughout the year. And the conversation, kind of is a roller coaster a little bit throughout the year and then to the end. But then you hit that brick wall is, okay, well, are all this talking, does it matter? Is it going to change anything? Is this the year that finally the push will be enough to say, let's do away with the contract the way it is and let's expand things sooner than later?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the question is going to come down to, do you break these contracts? And it's complicated because it's not just the one contract, ESPN, for the playoff games. It's all these different contracts with the bowls and all the venues that they use for this thing. So, still it feels most likely that it would be when the contract's up, but that's 5 more seasons of this. And there's a lot of people who are really frustrated with things. So are there other fixes and ways you could, set up the selection committee? Could you balance that better and maybe feel better about the decisions they're making? I don't know. So it's interesting because it does sort of feel like we're just kind of headed towards a few more years of just this tension of, people don't really love this system, but there's a contract, so we're going to have to ride it out. And then in a couple years, actually sit down, figure out what a format could look like. But I will tell you, there are commissioners involved in the management committee of the playoff that want to start having these conversations sooner. They're just not sure, considering all the contractual obligations, if that's actually a possibility. At least one of them thinks it is. But, you really need everybody on board. And you need people like Greg Sankey and the SEC on board. So you have to see, how angry is he about the way A&M was treated and that they didn't make the playoff, right? That could change some things.
Nicole Auerbach, senior writer with The Athletic. I know we've kept you for quite some time. A couple quick ones here, and then we'll let you go if you want to make them quick. You do have Ohio State and Alabama now in the national championship. I think what we all saw this past weekend is Ohio State and Alabama appear to be the 2 best teams in college football. How do you see this matchup setting up next Monday night?
I think it's going to be really fun. I mean, I think we certainly saw Notre Dame that, if Alabama's not facing a team that has similar talent, it's pretty obvious. And I don't think that that's going to happen in this game. I think, Justin Fields played at a level that injured that I don't know we all thought he could do. And so, you know, he's going to have to play like that because this is probably going to turn into a bit of a shootout, which I don't think would surprise anyone. And, you know, it's going to come down to the dudes on both sides, you know, getting the ball. And I think that that's what's going to be fun about it because, you know, Trey Sermon's emergence last couple of weeks has been huge for Ohio State. And that's why everyone's kind of making those parallels to 2014 with Ezekiel Elliott, because they didn't have that for the early part of the season. And now you have that to complement Chris Olave and the deep ball and threats in the vertical passing game. So it's much more terrifying of an offense. And so that's, I think, what's exciting about this is you feel like, you know, they have the pieces that can stay competitive in a shootout. But I think, you know, understandably, Alabama is still the favorite.
Do you feel any differently about Clemson today after watching what Ohio State did in the trenches?
I mean, I think that you know, those were areas that people had pointed to and certainly weren't the same, you know, than some of those, you know, the Dexter Lawrence, Cleveland Farrell, Clemson defenses. But yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely eye-opening. I think the lack of adjustments also was eye-opening. And then, you know, you sort of do wonder, you know, how different it could have been if you had Skalski and Nolan Turner the whole game. I don't think it would be that different, to be honest, but, you know, your mind does go there. But yeah, it was definitely interesting because you saw the areas that Clemson, for all that, you know, Ohio State and Alabama and all these teams kind of reload every single year. You did see the parts that they were actually rebuilding, and those are what cost them.
You know how many playoff games we've had where it's been single digits, the winner won by single digits, Nicole? In the semifinals, excuse me, not in the championship, in the semifinals.
Oh, I think, isn't it only, it's like three out of
and then
out of 14, it's something like that. Yeah, it's wild.
It's wild. Yeah, I wonder if Dabo. I mean, Ohio State was preparing for Clemson, I feel like, all year anyways. We just didn't really know that until we saw him play. I wonder if Dabo's 11 ranking, how much that had an effect on that game. I wonder if that really truly backfired. You think it did?
Well, I think the way that someone put it to me was that it probably helped those 2 weeks of practices when you're trying to get guys to play hard and to stay focused. When the game starts, it doesn't. But I do think that that's where the bulletin board material can come in and help you, is when it's a slog, when it's late in the season, you're tired. You know, we've heard so much about the exhaustion of these protocols and everything, the mental toll that this has all been. But when you're, you know, trying to push those guys to prepare for that semifinal, I'm sure that that's where that comes in.
Who wins the Heisman?
Well, I can't answer that as a voter, so I can't tell you who I'm going to vote for, but I do think that, or who I did vote for.
Right.
But, you know, it does feel like Devontae Smith is the front runner. And I think that that's awesome because it's so rare to even have non-quarterback finalists. So the fact that it feels like he's the front runner certainly makes you think that he's going to get it. Because I think if he wasn't, you know, it'd be hard pressed to think that enough people thought about, you know, voting for receiver number one. But now the way that people are talking about it as kind of a foregone conclusion makes me think that enough people did.
Final question here. I meant to squeeze this in earlier before I asked you that question. Has there ever been in your research, have we ever seen a team with 3 of the top 5 Heisman finalists? Obviously, Bama's got Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, and Najee Harris at 5.
That I do not know.
Okay.
We've definitely had years, even in recent years, where there's 2, but 3 feels like history, and I am not sure if that's ever happened before.
In the 94 Penn State team may have had, I know they had 2, potentially 3.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I'll go back and check that. Well, as a Penn State grad, that's something in the back of my head.
Whenever you write that column, you don't have to credit us. I was just asking a question. That's all. Don't worry. Nicole, thank you so much. I know we've kept you for quite some time today, but we took some time off for the holidays, so we figured we'd just come out with a bang today. You've been kind enough to join us for 25 lengthy minutes. Your work is absolutely excellent, and we really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back at some point in time. Hope you had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we look forward to watching what you've got to do over the next week, plus with the National Championship coming up and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care, guys. Happy New Year.
Yes, ma'am. There you go. Nicole Auerbach, senior writer with The Athletic. Really good stuff there. And, you know, I know that, and we'll get more into this as the show rolls on, but, you know, she was referencing the college football playoff expansion much more so like you. If it goes to 8, what could it look like? How would that be beneficial to the sport and things like that? But when I asked her about going beyond that, like 16, and asking the question in the fact that more games will matter late in the year, this like historic. So you and I grew up loving postseason in college football because every bowl game mattered. Like when the Gamecocks went to the Outback Bowl years ago in 2000, 2001, the turnaround from when they were 1-21 and things, those games mattered so much. The Outback Bowl was a great bowl game. It was a great reward for having a really good year. You weren't playing in the national championship, and there's so many, but it was a really good reward. There's so many other games that we grew up just loving, falling in love with. I mean, obviously the Rose Bowl and things like that, but the Citrus Bowl, and these games mattered. It was like, all right, look, you're not playing for a national championship, but you're being rewarded because you had a really special season, and you're gonna get to travel and probably go to Florida or wherever you're gonna go and go play football. And it was kind of a cherry on top. You wanted to win the game, but if you didn't, it was still still felt like there was a reward. Well, we played in the bowl game this year, and it was a good one. It seems like that luster has been so worn off.
Except for the major bowls. Like typically this year, let's take this year out of it. Typically you go to the Rose Bowl. That's a big deal, whether or not the Rose Bowl is part of the playoff that year. I mean, that's still a big deal. But the amount of bowls, I mean, so you take your 5 or 6 outside of the playoff that have that legacy, that have that tradition, and you're like, okay, I mean, that matters, and it's cool to go play there because you remember watching the pageantry as you're growing up.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The other bowls, like the, I don't know, taxslayer.com or the Cheetos or the Duke's Mayo, he's like, yeah, who cares? And I don't think you're ever going to get back to the point where the bowls actually matter. You won't, because they don't, because the bottom line is they don't. Coaches want them. It's good for practice. I get all that.
Right.
But the bottom line is they don't matter. And I think that the best case I heard, and I mean, it's fairly obvious from Nicole when you started talking 16, she said, well, at least then you're paying attention to the Pac-12.
Yeah.
At least then you're paying attention to the Mountain West in week 6, because who knows what Boise State and Wyoming, how that will affect the Mountain West and maybe an at-large somewhere else. So maybe it does, if you expand to 16, really throw a lot more emphasis on at least the regular season.
Oh, I think it does. I mean, I really do. And look, if they expand, I am very hard-pressed to believe they're going to expand anywhere beyond 8 teams, at least initially. Maybe down the road it will be. But I'll just, if you look at what the final 16 rankings were in the college football playoff. And again, we have to remember that you got to take conference championships into account here. Well, Southern Cal and Oregon played for the conference, the Pac-12 championship, right?
Sort of, but yes.
But they did, right?
They did.
Neither one of them were in the top 16.
Uh-huh.
So you can't just take the top 16 teams and say, well, that's what it would have looked like, because Southern Cal was 17 and Oregon was 25. So they would somehow have to be in that top 16 wherever they'd be seated. It might be 16, might be, I don't know.
Right. Or they bump somebody out. Because as a conference champ, you have to be in. Right,
exactly. So like you would have to take all of your conference champions. And that's where I've been with this all along. Like, I get it. I'm not dumb. I understand that Conference USA or Maction or whatever you want to say. Look, I know that those leagues aren't the SEC, aren't the ACC, aren't the Big 12. I get it. I totally understand it. But what she was saying a little while ago was, why do we watch that 5-12 in college hoops?
Mm-hmm.
We watch it because there's a potential upset on the line here.
Always an upset in the 5-12.
All right. 5-12 this year would have been Texas A&M and Coastal Carolina.
It'd have been fun.
I don't think Coastal Carolina could beat Texas A&M. I don't think that. But could they? We don't know because they can't play the game.
Right.
And like that's where all of a sudden that Coastal Carolina championship game, which wasn't able to be played, but if it was able to be played, like, oh man, A&M probably isn't going to be a top 4 seed. They're probably going to be a 5 seed. So if A&M or Oklahoma is a 5 seed, one of them, whoever wins this Louisiana Coastal game, they both had great years. Whoever gets that's going to get them. Could that be? Which one would be a better upset? Like, that just adds so much more intrigue to the sport of college football, and it makes so many games matter more throughout the season. Like, you think about, like, on November the 28th, all right, so we've got all these great rivalry games. Well, if you've got an 8-3 South Carolina team one year and a 10-1 Clemson team one year, Clemson clearly is going to go to the ACC championship game and have a chance to get into, the college football playoff. Well, South Carolina, if they upset Clemson, they got a chance to get in the college football playoff. If they go 8-4, they're probably not going to be in that top 16. Like, all of a sudden, there is something really on the line there that wasn't on the line before. It was just a rivalry game, and all of a sudden, it matters more nationally.
Yeah, because you can get in at large if you're sitting there in that scenario and you beat Clemson. Then that improves your resume to get one of those at-large bids.
You're not just an 8-3 team anymore who had a nice year, and you're probably going to go to the Outback Bowl or the Citrus Bowl. All of a sudden, you're an 8-3 team that if you pull a major upset over your rival, you're in the college football playoff at 9-3, and maybe you've knocked Clemson from being a potential top 8 national seed, but they're going to be a home host or something like that out of there. I mean, there's so much more that goes into a big, large, expanded playoff, and I think in the midst of this pandemic, it's amazing some of the things that have come out of it, with coaches being fired and stuff like that. With all of the uncertainties this year and all of the discrepancies in league record and who can play and who didn't play and why did this team lose and why did this team not lose and yet whatever, I think what we're also seeing is you could add so much more intrigue to the end of the college football season and make the entire regular season valuable to many more football teams out there than what we have right now in our current system.
If you were to have told me at any point in time that we'd get on the show today and in the first 40 minutes, my thought of the same way I've thought about something for years would be changing, I'd have told you you're nuts. But I'm starting to lean that way. I mean, I am leaning more towards your 16 now. And there's just been enough reasoning to keep the intrigue in the regular season. And then, while I don't think it necessarily grows the sport by hanging a banner, woo, we were number 16, we went to the playoffs, and we got our doors knocked off, I do think for the whole sport, you and Mike Morgan have talked about it a lot. How do you grow college football?
Yeah.
What's the way to grow it? Because it's already such a force of nature. So how do you make it bigger and better? Maybe that's a way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously, we'll talk more about it, but it's none of this is real right now. It's all hypothetical, but it's just the fact of the matter. Like, I'm telling you, when I couldn't wait to watch the A&M North Carolina game. And then when I got news a couple of days before the North Carolina had all of those opt-outs,
yep,
I was like, wow. And North Carolina was in that thing until halfway through the fourth quarter, and A&M took control and they won the game 41-27. But that would not have happened if North Carolina was a 13 seed in the college football playoff.
No.
Those guys wouldn't be opting out. Like, so I think that there's a lot that can be helped by expanding the playoff even beyond 8. The argument that I would like people to get away from is quit trying to determine exactly which 2 or 3 teams out there can just win the national championship. Enjoy the process. Like, I'm more of the process guy. Like, well, right now, based on this, it should have just been Ohio State and Alabama. Clemson and Notre Dame weren't any good. Okay, but if you have an expanded playoff and you have more teams that are able to get on the dance floor and get out there and have some fun, at the end of the day, it might still be Alabama and Ohio State. Very well could be. I don't know. Could be a different matchup based on seeding that's just not a good matchup for somebody and they get upset. You don't know, but here's what we do know. You would have all of a sudden 15 games at the end of the year that all matter for one thing specifically. Big old trophy that says national championship on it. You might be able to anticipate that this team's going to get their rear ends kicked or whatever, but you're still going to watch the game because it matters.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have liked to have seen a 12-5 A&M Coastal matchup this year. I don't know about the rest of y'all. I think that'd be fun.
I think it'd be fun. It's very easy to say, you know what, but if you're taking a Coastal team and the guys on the line of scrimmage going up against an SEC team, they would have no chance. But at the same time, the way Coastal Carolina plays, would it work week in and week out in the SEC? No. But would it be kind of like an option coming at Texas A&M? A little bit different of a of something that they've seen throughout the year. Yeah. Could it trip them up? It sure did to BYU.
Absolutely.
BYU is a bigger, stronger, more physical, more talented team than Coastal, and they got run out of that building.
Right.
So, yeah, it could happen.
Could have been.
Could happen.
Could have had a 4-13 Notre Dame, North Carolina rematch. I mean, there could have been some neat stuff to really keep an eye on out there. But anyways, that's for another day, certainly. All right, when we return, we'll get into some of the coaching changes that are happening out there and some that could be happening. This morning, a column written by Matt Hayes with Saturday Down South, taking a deep dive into Dan Mullen heading to the NFL. Wait, what? That and more right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
Family Bingo Night is back. All 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
Hey everybody, what's going on? This is singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, but whenever I want to keep up with the South Carolina Gamecocks or even the Clemson Tigers, I can still tune in to JB and Goldwater because they are always live, loud, and online.
And I sing hallelujah.
All right, 1247. Welcome back to JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. January the 4th, our first show here in 2021. Hopefully we're off to a good start in the new year. Darren, Jamie here till 3 o'clock this afternoon. We do have Wes Mitchell coming up at 1 o'clock today. We'll get into the Gamecock staff. It's almost complete. We'll give you the news that hit yesterday. We'll talk about the news that hit yesterday. South Carolina bringing in a wide receivers coach who knows the program quite well, and we'll get Wes's comments on when the staff could be completed. It could be today. So we'll tell you more about that. Hang tight. He's coming up here in about 12, 13 minutes on the JB and Goldwater Show. There is movement, and lots of it, Darren, in college football with some of the major names in the sport. Over the weekend, we got the really strange unfolding of the Texas Longhorns situation. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, it was, no, we're moving forward with Tom Herman. And then it was, well, Tom Herman's out and Steve Sarkisian is in. So obviously that was in the works behind the scenes for quite some time.
I said it as soon as I saw that word hit the wire that Herman is out. The first thing I said is, well, they did this now. Obviously they've got the replacement. Yeah. That deal is done. And it took 30 seconds for all of that to start coming out that Steve Sarkisian was coming over from Alabama.
I think that he is a great fit for Texas.
Is he an upgrade from Tom Herman?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I really do. First of all, I think that this guy, Tom Herman, has always struck me as a guy who is about Tom Herman. And I think that Steve Sarkisian, with what he went through on a personal level, the alcoholism, rebuilding his coaching profile, working with obviously Nick Saban in Alabama and things like that, I think that he has not necessarily rebuilt his image, Darren. I think that he's rebuilt himself. And I think he'll be a breath of fresh air in Austin, Texas. We know what the expectations are there. They have not hit those expectations in quite some time. And I think he is a man who is hungry to get back out and prove himself. I would caution people looking at his record as a head coach at Washington and Southern Cal and judging his future based on that. I do think what he did at Washington at that point in time with what he had, with what he was building, I think he did a pretty good job. And we don't know what would have happened at Southern Cal because he didn't get a chance to finish out even part of his contract. So if he's able to head to Austin, there's talent there. If he's able to put the right staff around him, I think he can do very well. Obviously, the Big 12 scores points. This guy knows how to score points. Look at Alabama right now. They got 3 of the top 5 Heisman finalists, and they're all on offense.
Look, you can easily make the case of, well, how good of a head coach is he? But you could also make the case that Tom Herman was the greatest head coach on the planet when he took the Texas job because he couldn't lose. He was dominating. So it's a lot like other coaching hires. You have to you got to wait and see. You got to wait and see if it'll be a fit. If something wasn't exactly right with Herman and the players, I don't know that, but I'm just saying, is it a personality for Sarkisian that will either mesh perfectly or be like oil and water when he goes in there, because that's going to be a big part of it. And can he call plays? Yeah, he can absolutely call plays. What's wild to me, 12 times in the last 14 years, a Steve Saban coordinator, either side, has taken a head FBS job. 12 times in the last 14 years.
Nick Saban.
Nick Saban.
Oh,
what did I say?
Steve Saban. I thought you were. No, I thought you were combining the two.
No,
I got you. Nick Saban.
There you go.
Okay.
Nick Saban, the dude from Alabama. 12 times in the last 14 years, one of his coordinators has taken an FBS head coaching job. I mean, so the tree that he has built the roots are bigger than maybe any other coaching tree.
And the train keeps rolling, and it might as well. A report from Bruce Feldman a little over an hour ago, by the way, is that Nick Saban is considering for that vacant OC job in Tuscaloosa, which, by the way, will still be held through the national championship game by Steve Sarkisian. He'll continue to call plays, but a couple of candidates for the job, now former Jets head coach Adam Gase and former Texans Penn State head coach Bill O'Brien, potentially, amongst other names being mentioned. Mike Bobo, by the way, came out recently on a list for that job. Major Applewhite, who at one point in time was already there, and there's some others, but Saban will be fine. He'll plug the next guy in. It fits the system, and they'll move right along.
Here's the Bill O'Brien name. It's come up for every opening. Yeah. Everyone. There's no question O'Brien wants back in. I think that'd actually be a really good fit.
I think it'd be a great fit.
I think that'd be dangerous.
Well, I think what would happen there is he'd call plays for 2 or 3 years, and he'd land another job.
Exactly.
And that's what Saban wants. I mean, that's what he wants. As for Sark at Texas, there are some reports out there circulating that Will Muschamp could accompany him and go back to the Longhorns program as defensive coordinator, where he once was under Mac Brown, and was also named head coach in waiting there prior to taking the Florida gig at the end of 2010, which would be interesting. The thing in the Big 12 is you don't have to look much further than what we saw this year at John Heacock at Iowa State. Like you just have to be good enough on defense. If you can score points, you're going to win in the Big 12. I mean, look at Oklahoma historically. Score a lot of points. They play pretty well on defense at times. It's not always perfect. It's not always special, but they play well enough to go out there and win 10 or 11 games a year. And Texas is no different. You're in the state of Texas. You can recruit anybody you want to. You need a recruiter, and you need a guy who can just do enough for you. And Will Muschamp fits both.
So, yeah, in the Big 12, Texas isn't trying to win the Big 12. No, that'd be nice.
You're right.
That's a stepping stone. National championship or bust. That's what Texas is. Yeah. So your defense has to be a little bit better than that. Because when you get to the playoff, you got to stop Ohio State. You got to stop Alabama.
Right.
You got to stop
Oklahoma has not done any of that in the playoff.
Right.
To your point.
So that you can have good enough defense and win the Big 12. But if you keep winning the Big 12, if you're, say, Steve Sarkisian, the new head coach of Texas, and you win the Big 12 3 years in a row and get boat raced in the playoffs 3 years in a row, you're getting fired.
Yeah.
It's the way it's going to go at Texas.
And look, for most notably the folks that listen to our program, a lot of them are Carolina fans, and they want to knock Will Muschamp. Oh God, you can have him if you want him. Will Muschamp is still an elite defensive coordinator. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
the guy can recruit, the guy can coach, and he proved that his whole career. That's how he got where he got with 2 jobs in the SEC. All right, he is a hell of a defensive coordinator, and he would probably go back to doing things the Will Muschamp way and running a defense himself if he's hired out there. I think that'd be a great fit for Will, and I think it'd be a great fit for Steve Sarkisian, and hiring a guy again who can recruit the state of Texas. You don't have to go a lot further than that. And a guy who understands the program, and Will certainly did understand the program, and they loved him.
And they like him, right?
Yeah, they loved him.
Yep.
And I think he'd be welcome back with open arms. Forget the head coaching record. I think he'd be welcome with open arms. So we'll see. But watch out, Big 12. I really think that this is a great hire. I think Steve Sarkisian is a great fit. I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think the folks in Austin are going to really enjoy him. Couple of other notes. Jim Harbaugh could be getting extended. It looks like he will get extended at Michigan. I don't know that comes with any more money. I think it's just an extension on the contract. Lane Kiffin did receive an extension this weekend, by the way, at Ole Miss. No details officially out yet on that contract either. Where there is not an extension is in Gainesville. And Matt Hayes, Saturday Down South, take it or leave it, whether you
believe it or not.
Listen to a lot of what they have to say. This is a really good report that you put out. So 10 things we know basically about Dan Mullen. And apparently it's not as rosy as it may appear inside the program in Gainesville. I mean, he's had some moments this year where we were like, what are you doing? And, this whole thing that what do you say before they or after they got boat raced by Oklahoma?
They said that the season was already over, that it didn't
in the SEC championship game.
Well, that it didn't matter, after getting just destroyed by Oklahoma. That didn't matter. We're already ahead.
Our last game's 11 days ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Got a bunch of walk-ons, some really good time out here, and they were like, well, wait a second. That's not how we do things around here.
Yeah.
There's reports that he has been poking around in the NFL for an NFL gig. I'll tell you what, man. So I have a lot of respect for Scott Strickland, the AD in Gainesville, who came from Mississippi State, knows Dan Mullen very, very well. If he catches wind that Dan Mullen's poking around for an NFL gig, he'll fire him. And keep in mind, Dan Mullen is 29-9 in the Swamp. All right. He won 28 games. And he's won 29 now, but he won 28 faster than any other coach in the history of that school. That includes Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer.
That's right.
All right. And they'll fire him. They're not going to deal with somebody down there who's going to toy around with what his future looks like. They have not extended him in 2 years.
Right. And the reason they could fire him at that point is because of the success or lack thereof of overwhelming success from Mullen. I mean, this year, if you were to poll the Florida fans right now, my sense is this year would just be a whole lot of like blah, because there were the highs, there were the weird, inexplicable lows, the fights on the sideline between, coach and coordinator. There were the defense that was getting better, and then it could never really fix itself. It didn't feel like a happy marriage. So the first thing I thought when I heard Mullen looking at the NFL, first thing I thought was I laughed. Then I thought, well, okay, you're trying to get out before they get you, because there's probably something at least uncomfortable in Gainesville because the expectations there are very high, and there were public ups and downs this year. So it can't be that comfortable behind the scenes. And maybe he's looking for a soft landing spot.
Apparently in Jacksonville, Urban Meyer could land there, but it's his gig to turn down from what reports say. But if not, you think he could return to Gainesville? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think he's one of those guys, when that ship has sailed, it's over. But it's worth a conversation. We'll come back to that. On the other side of this break, hour 2, we'll lead off with Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central. What's going on in Columbia? The coaching staff coming together for Shane Beamer. Still a couple of hires to be made. Wes Mitchell will fill us in on all the details right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by our friends at McFadden Pest Control.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston, Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Lowcountry. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
103, not the final hour on a Monday afternoon. We're going to take this thing to 3 o'clock here as Darren and I welcome in the new year on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, stokesvw.com. We're on the all-new JB and Goldwater app and also at jbandgoldwatershow.com. Both of those you can watch and listen to our program for free daily. Darren, Jamie, Wes Mitchell joining us from Columbia, South Carolina with Gamecock Central. Although we go till 3 today, I will promote my friend here and remind everybody that GC Live comes up at 2 o'clock. So if you can split screen us and see who's better, do that. Wes and Chris are pretty good at what they do, and they're on for an hour, coming up in an hour as well. But what's up, man? Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. What's up, guys?
Oh, nothing.
just figured you'd want to see Jamie every now and then because you always make fun of me for national stuff. So now we've got all that figured out for you.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, I did miss y'all. I got to admit.
Of course.
Hi, Wes. I'll wave at you now that you can see me. First, I hope you had a very Merry Christmas and an incredibly Happy New Year. It's all back to the grind now, my friend, and there's probably nothing to do with Gamecock Central right now. Nothing to report on. Nothing, right? Nothing. Just bored.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it ever really stops, does it? So, it was cool to, I guess, I don't know if you call it a break, but it was cool to go see some family and stuff like that. But, yeah, man, excited to see what happens moving forward. And I think Gamecock fans are excited and probably have a reason to be.
They should be. They should be. We'll get to what could fill out the remainder of the staff here in a moment, but we did get the news yesterday that it's now official. Justin Stepp is, quote, coming home. So we ought to get used to that phrase, right?
Dude, that's it, right? I think when someone commits, that's the new Spurs up.
Yeah, welcome home. And he is certainly coming back from Arkansas to South Carolina now. Wide receivers coach, back to an area he knows quite well, Wes. So what do you know about this hire? How long has this been in the works and things like that? Do you know Justin Stepp? Have you spent any time with him and his family?
I'm very familiar with both Stepp brothers. Obviously Justin and Josh there at Georgia State as well. And I think, as you said, an opportunity for him to come home. I think that's probably why this sort of played out the way it did. I got the impression it's maybe been sort of quietly in the works for the last week or so, potentially. I don't know the exact date or anything like that, but I think coming home is the biggest maybe aspect to this thing. And obviously you're talking about somebody who played his high school ball at Pillion, was born in Columbia, went to Furman, then coached obviously at Clemson as well, and actually got his first coaching job was at Fort Mill High School. So obviously a ton of roots to the state of South Carolina here when it comes to Justin Stepp, and someone, if you look at the resume both on the field and certainly in recruiting, you can see why South Carolina and Shane Beamer was anxious to go get him.
What's on the resume for Justin Stepp? What has he done as a college football coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look, obviously he sort of had an off the field type role at Clemson, but then was put on the field at SMU for about 3 years, and then was at Arkansas for 3 years, and obviously sort of got his start under Chad Morris, and was coaching receivers in that offense. But dude, I mean, I think you look, put a couple of guys in the NFL from SMU, has a couple of guys that are in position to be able to go to the league from Arkansas as well. Recruiting wise, just the guys he was able to sign, we often have started to look more and more at who out there can sign impressive classes, maybe at a non-logo type school. And, you look certainly at what a guy like Des Kitchings was able to do at NC State and how that translates to South Carolina. I think you look at, a guy like Justin Stepp. I mean, you look back, 2019 class, he signed 4 4-star wide receivers according to the Rivals rankings. He was a Rivals 250 or Rivals top 25 recruiter in that class. And just if you just look at Rivals rankings in the 3+ classes, I guess one of them it was sort of transitioning in. The other one, obviously, it's only been early signing day for this class, so obviously Arkansas will complete this class without him. But so far, sort of 3+ classes, you're looking at 6 4-star guys on Rivals, and actually 7 if you add in, sort of take the highest ranking if you include other rankings in it. So I went and I sorted the Rivals rankings by rating, and if the top 2 commits for Arkansas's class for 2021 are both Justin Stepp guys. The top 2, and then I think 4 of the top 6 were Stepp guys. There's some tied rankings in there, obviously, but for 2019, same deal, top 2, and then 4 of the top 6. So I think it's just impressive all the way around, and you're talking about another guy who fits this mold we're seeing of maybe hiring someone who doesn't just see this as just the next job, but sees this as an opportunity to get back to his home state.
One of the things I think that's interesting about Justin Stepp, Wes, and it was actually noted in your report that's on Gamecock Central. I think you put it out last night, but he obviously learned under Chad Morris, which is one of the first offenses a decade ago that I think we started to watch kind of evolve into what we see today across the country. And then this past year, he spent time with Kendall Briles. And, if you ask Gamecock fans who Kendall Briles is and who is Chad Morris, we're very familiar with both of those names, guys who have very different offenses, but very offenses that can score a lot of points, move fast, and things like that. How does that knowledge How does he bring that knowledge to what this system might be in Columbia? You got Shane coming, and he's got aspects of the Lincoln Riley Oklahoma system. You got Mike Bobo and his background. You got a bunch of different backgrounds here. How do you think all this meshes?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it starts with you need talent to run an offense that if you're going to spread it out and if this is truly going to be some version of what we saw at Oklahoma, you're going to need some guys who can go make some plays on the edges for you. So I think it starts out as being a fit in that this is someone who's proven he can evaluate and go sign players, which is a huge need for South Carolina offensive side of the ball right now as far as playmakers go. Scheme-wise, scheme fit, I mean, I think you look at obviously Kendall Briles and what they've done there at Arkansas and the Briles system, and it is spread to the max, obviously. You look at Chad Morris, obviously, as a version of the spread offense as well. And, I think you do have a really good fit there. When I posted that, someone responded and said, well, do you really think Mike Bobo is going to be running the spread? And I said, yes, absolutely, because I still think there's a sense from some of the fan base that what we saw this past year is what Mike Bobo wants to run schematically. Well, the very first thing one of the first things he said when he got the job was, I'm going to have to figure out what my current team does best and then fit the offense around that. So sometimes you have to run an offense based out of necessity as opposed to what you sort of want your offense to be long term. So I think, take a look at what Mike Bobo ran at Colorado State, very multiple. Did you have some old school aspects there? Yes, you did, but you also had a ton of spread aspects there. Add that into what you see with Shane Beamer and what he's brought in from Oklahoma. He's said straight up, I'm going to bring in elements of this Oklahoma offense. Then let's go look at the hires. Obviously, Stepp, very well versed in the spread. Eric Kimry at tight ends, very well versed in the spread. So you have some coaches here that have spread backgrounds, and ultimately it just seems like that's the plan. Now next year, 2021, it's going to depend on the talent and if they can get that receiver position fixed, basically, for lack of a better word. But I think this is a guy who's proved already at a young age. He was born in '83, so he's not an old guy at all, but he's proved at a young age he can go sign players and that he can develop guys. I was talking to our Arkansas Rivals folks, Nikki Chavanel, who does a great job over there. She said, this is one of the better, possibly one of the best recruiters I've ever covered, and said that, he's already got one, maybe two guys from this current Arkansas team that are probably future NFL guys coming out soon as well.
Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central on Twitter at Wes Mitchell GC. You talk about upgrading that position. They've already maybe done that a little bit. Amarian Brown has committed to South Carolina after transferring from Georgia Tech. Not a big kid, 5'10", 170 pounds. He's a fast one, though, 10.4 in the 100 in high school, which that's lightning quick. I don't even drive that fast. Wes, what do we know about this young man and how quick of an impact he can make on this receiving corps?
I think it's a great pickup for South Carolina. There's no Shi Smith, y'all. So you're talking about taking a receiving corps that, had one just proven solid, option that played really well this past season, and he's going to the NFL. So I don't want to put Shi Smith expectations on Amarian Brown as far as, hey, this is what you should expect from him. I don't think that's necessarily fair to either guy. But as far as, maybe how I would expect for him to be used, how the skill set fits from what we've seen from the offense and South Carolina's ability to get someone the football, I think that's probably the expectation for how you would use a guy like that. I really like looking at his freshman film. A lot of these slot guys, and he fits that slot role. He's not the biggest, but he is quick and he is fast. But a lot of your slot guys are more underneath type routes, these mesh routes, slant routes, quick outs, stuff like that, flat routes. He's really a guy who's got down the field skills. And, makes a ton of plays on the deep ball, adjusts well to the deep ball. As you said, if you have 10-4 speed, you have long speed as well, not just a lot of short people like me have quickness as opposed to speed.
Yeah.
And, so these slot guys are quicker than they are fast a lot of times. But Amarian Brown is actually fast. He has long speed as well. So adjust to the ball, as I said. I want to say 7 of his catches as a freshman there were for 25 yards or more. Wow. And tied some guy named Calvin Johnson's freshman touchdown record for a receiver. So, I think it's a really nice pickup and someone that just sort of needed a fresh start. And, I mean, if he's healthy, I would almost pencil him into that starting lineup at the beginning of the year next year. And I think clearly is someone who can probably help you on special teams as well.
Well, and here's the thing too, Wes. I know that this cycle isn't done. We still have another signing day coming up, and obviously the transfer portal is wide open. And my guess is that they'll take another couple of guys through that as far as wideouts go, if they can, certainly. But when you look at the roster right now, there are a ton of wide receivers on this roster. I mean, 12 is what I've counted. Jalen Brooks, if they're all back, Jalen Brooks, Chad Terrell, Josh Van, you got DeCarrion Joyner, Xavier Leggett, a bunch of young guys, Rico Powers, Jakari Caldwell, Mike Wyman. And then you got some guys who are going to be coming in, like Brown, Sam Reynolds, Omega Blake. I know a bunch of folks are high on him from Rock Thrill, which is Football City, USL.
Yeah.
And then you got Randricus Davis and Otrey Smith. Have you heard anything on those two guys, whether they plan to return and if they can return?
Yeah, I mean, they can return. I haven't heard anything specifically at all on Randricus Davis. I do know that Otrey Smith, and I'm not, how should I say it? I'm not reporting this as a fact. I'm sure Otrey, I don't know, maybe he'll come out with something at some point. I don't know. But from everything I've heard, the expectation, was that Otrey is still a part of South Carolina football right now. And I think the expectation is that he would be back. So that's another guy that can, potentially help you if he's healthy and good to go. And obviously is needed. I think he was clearly could have been used this past season if he had been able to play. And I think, you're talking about a guy who's been through just so much as far as stuff out of his hands with the knee, and had a very, very impressive freshman year. Not many freshmen just come in and catch as many passes as he did. So there's a guy with potential. But obviously there's quantity on this roster, but I do think I don't think if you're South Carolina, you can necessarily just count on that and say, hey, we got some guys, we'll be fine. I think you have to continue to add, and I think you continue to add from the transfer portal if you can find the right guy. And obviously if there's a high school guy out there that you feel like can make an impact, you do that as well. And, maybe there's a guy that out there that Step has a relationship with and, was recruiting at Arkansas and could potentially come in and maybe help you there as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, when I mention all those names, I don't want people to think that those all those guys are going to be on the roster. I don't know that to be true.
Just currently.
The transfer portal's open to them too.
Yeah.
And Wes, we see this every year, right? And this year is going to be as much as any where you get to spring practice, you get through spring practice, and then you're probably going to have some defections. And we might very well see that here at South Carolina for and against this football team.
Yeah, you always have that, especially if guys don't play or don't think their role is what they want it to be. You have transfers, and then it sort of gets expanded with the new transfer rules that are in place right now. It got expanded with the transfer portal, which made it easier than ever to transfer, and then it sort of gets expanded, honestly, when there's a coaching change as well. So you have all those different factors, I think, at play here, and then. Hey, guess what? South Carolina will be bringing in transfers of their own. So if you're at a position and you see, hey, coach added 2 or 3 other guys at my spot, maybe you start seeing the writing on the wall as well. So I think there will be a lot of factors at play here that are going to determine how things play out, not just a receiver, throughout the entire roster.
All right, Wes, here it is on offense. Mike Bobo back running the offense. He is your coordinator and also your quarterback's coach. Des Kitchings will once again coach the tailbacks, and what a job he did this year, certainly. Deshaun Fenwick, of course, if any of you missed the news, announced his intent to transfer from South Carolina. We'll probably try to find a way to fill his shoes. Of course, Marshawn Lloyd is going to be returning this year as well. Justin Stepp now at wide receiver. Eric Kimry will coach the tight ends, and Will Friend coming from Knoxville. He'll coach the offensive line. The offensive staff is in place. Pete Limbo will coach the special teams. He's kind of the tweener between both sides of the football, and that brings us to the other side of the football where they're still waiting on a couple of hires here. We've heard some leaders in the clubhouse potentially to be the defensive coordinator, maybe to coach the secondary. We've heard Torian Gray's name mentioned multiple times from Florida. From what I understand, Wes, is a strong possibility he ends up in Columbia. For Derek Mason's name, amongst others, mentioned to run the defense. What are you hearing today? Has any of that changed?
No, nothing new today. I mean, I will caution people that, hey, he being Shane Beamer, he's been able to operate very quietly on all this stuff. I've had people comment to me, people that are normally in the know on things, just how quiet it's kind of been impressive, just how quiet it's been as far as how things have played out. Obviously, when you look at the final spots, the defense coordinator is going to be the biggest one there. And, I get the impression you're sort of waiting on Derek Mason. Obviously, he has options. He's got multiple options, I think. And there's nothing that says he has to get back into football now either. There was a sentiment at one point that he may sort of sit it out a year and just sort of regroup and then hop back in next offseason. So I think you have a lot of factors at play here. Obviously everybody's heard Torian Gray as that final slot. Nobody, that's nothing new. It's sort of been a rumor that's persisted for a long time. And I think there's certainly something to it. Too many connections there for there not to be something to it. But I think also that is a spot that, you don't want to box yourself in and go ahead and make that hire before you make your defensive coordinator hire. So I'm from what we've heard, from what Chris Clark has heard and reported, essentially you're waiting to see what's going to happen with the defensive coordinator spot. And then, you would make that final hire, whether it would be Torian Gray or someone else potentially, because you don't want to sort of box it in and have to go hire a defensive coordinator and then say, hey, here are your guys. You can't bring anybody at all with you.
And there's really no rush anyway, right? I mean, at this point, there's still a lot of movement out there. You just said Mason's got tons of options. I mean, there are staffs being filled around the country, guys moving around. I mean, is there a drop dead date for filling out the staff?
No, I mean, there's probably not a rush at all on Derek Mason's part. I think he can do whatever he wants. I think if you're South Carolina, you really probably are sitting there wanting to get this thing done sooner rather than later. I think they had hoped to be able to announce the full staff with the BOT meeting today. Right now, that's going to be at like 3:00 this afternoon. So an hour and a half from now or so. And right now, there'll be the 8 official announcements, the 7 from last week, and then Stepp will be official this afternoon as well. So, you're always at a rush, right? So you want to be able to get these guys recruiting, and you want to be able to your defensive current assistants want to be able to have somebody to recruit to, if that makes sense. These kids want to know who their defensive coordinator will be. So I think there's always a rush, but you got to get it right. And clearly, I think it's clear that Derek Mason has emerged as sort of that guy to watch, as sort of that target for South Carolina. It's just a matter of, what does he really decide to do? And then once that happens, I think that the 10th spot will be filled, pretty quickly, because it sounds like it's going to be determined by what happens with the 9th spot, which will be the defense coordinator.
And I know that you said that Shane has done a a great job at keeping most of this quiet, Wes. But if Derek Mason is at this point in time the perceived leader to be the defensive coordinator, let's say that doesn't work out. Are you comfortable mentioning any other names that maybe have passed through your desk that you could say, well, they might be in consideration here, or is that conversation on hold until we know about the future of Derek Mason?
I think it's on hold at this point. Obviously, there were some other names that were mentioned early on. Do they circle back to a guy? Jay Bateman was mentioned early on at North Carolina. Kevin Still, the former Auburn DC, has been mentioned. Those are names that have been out there. I imagine the way this thing has gone, that there are other names out there that maybe just have not surfaced and that are being kept quiet until they're possibly, needed once we see what happens here with Derek Mason.
When you look at what has transpired to this point, Wes, with the hires that he's made thus far, how do you summarize Shane Beamer's, I don't want to call it goals, but how do you summarize his work thus far in trying to complete this staff? I mean, Kimry, Kitchings, Stepp, on defense, retaining Mike Peterson, Tracy Rocker. Do you see similarities in all these coaches? Is there something specific that they all share that he's wanted to make sure that this staff can collectively carry forward together?
I would say it's a combination of fit and SEC experience. And so basically every guy on this staff is either someone that's deemed an outstanding fit in that they have some other connection to either the University of South Carolina or the state of South Carolina, or both, or they're a proven SEC commodity. I think, you look, Bobo, Will Friend, Tracy Rocker, Mike P., all guys with SEC experience. Then you look at Stepp, you look at Kimry, you look at Des Kitchings, all guys that are from the state of South Carolina. Kimry checks the box of both being a former Gamecock player and obviously from the state. Stepp checks both boxes of being from the state and having SEC experience. And then I look at Pete Lembo as being the most absolute underrated, perfect hire you ever could have added to that spot, because the guy has 15 years of experience as a head coach. He is a team first person all the way. He's someone that Shane Beamer can lean on, and he's sort of officially announced, I think, that Beamer Ball, even though they're not going to call it Beamer Ball, that a special teams focus is going to be a big part of what Shane Beamer tries to do at South Carolina. If you look at some of the just rankings as far as special teams goes, that Limbo has had with his units across multiple places, and the winning he's done as far as doing more with less and stuff like that. That's a guy none of us in the media were talking about at all. And then he gets hired, and it all happened really fast. And then you start doing some research on this guy, and you're just like, wow, this is a perfect hire for Shane Beamer. And I would say head coaching experience. Let's play a game for a moment and say it is Derek Mason. Then you have Mike Bobo, Derek Mason, and Pete Lembo, and so you have three guys there that are all former head coaches. And then obviously, Kimry at tight ends is a longtime high school head coach. So Shane Beamer doing a very smart thing, I think. Some coaches are almost scared to hire names that are bigger than their name because they don't want to be undermined or something. But if you're a young coach, it makes sense to bring in veterans that you can trust. So it's a combination of veteran guys, but then young guys that can relate and recruit and stuff like that. But then you get added bonuses all over the place. So because even though Bobo is a former head coach and is experienced, he's also still known as being a heck of a recruiter, especially in the state of Georgia. So all of these things make a lot of sense.
You just went exactly where I was going to go, because with Lembo there, I covered him when I was back in SoCon days and he was at Elon, and I saw the name pop up, and obviously it surprised me probably more than it would surprise any of you guys who were covering it closer than I was. But then I went back and tried to I knew he had a background, and I had to go back and realize exactly who he was and what made him a good fit. And then that's where my mind went with the head coaches that are on staff. Lembo's there, Bobo's there, whoever ends up being the defensive coordinator could easily be, if it's Mason, if not, a former head coach. I mean, it's like Beamer is putting a staff around him similar to staffs that he's been around already, going up through the ranks, making sure that there's experience kind of in every spot.
Yeah, and I think if you're a first-year head coach, honestly, that's kind of what you have to do. That's what you should do. So I'm very curious to see how it all plays out.
All right, it's essentially, we'll see who he hires for the DC, but you essentially have a head coach for every side of the ball. I mean, you have a head coach on defense, a head coach on offense, a head coach of special teams, then you got the head coach.
That's right.
That's Shane Beamer's. Pretty impressive stuff here. All right, before we let you run, Ryan Helinski is going to transfer out. I know this hurts the hearts of a lot of Gamecock fans because this young man came all the way across the country with his family. We all know about Helinski's hope. We know about the story of his brother at Washington State. And obviously he filled in last year as the starting quarterback for South Carolina for 11 games and I think did as good of a job as he probably could have done, Wes. And then this year he wasn't able to be the guy, but he'll leave the program. So kind of a twofold question here. The future of Ryan Helinski, do you see him ending up somewhere that might be fairly familiar to South Carolina? Maybe they'll see him at some point in time down the road. And does this open the door for the Gamecocks to maybe potentially bring in a transfer quarterback like they did last year in Colin Hill?
Yeah, I haven't really heard anything on where Helinski might end up. Obviously, that'll be interesting. Maybe there's some connections out there that, to when he was recruited. Obviously, he was recruited all over the country, so maybe a former connection there. But, I think if you're South Carolina, especially depending on what Colin Hill does, you probably really have to take a hard look at seeing what's out there and seeing if there's somebody as a grad transfer that, that maybe makes sense at that position, because you don't want to get left at a spot where you just have, a true sophomore and a true freshman, at that position.
No question. Coming up at 2:00 today, GC Live at Face You're Seeing. You'll see it again. Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark will be on for an hour, and we hope that you'll all, while you're watching our show, make sure you have that one on as well. You can do it. It's like split screen on Saturday college football.
Yeah,
right?
Just like you're watching right here. Split screen it.
That's right.
Get another screen to do it.
My gut tells me they'll have much deeper conversation about all these topics. Wes, thank you so much. I hope you had just a wonderful holiday season. It's great to have you back. Here's to a wonderful 2021 with you and our friends at Gamecock Central. And as always, we appreciate your time. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Okay.
Yes, sir. There you go. Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central in Columbia, South Carolina. All right. It is almost time for a timeout. Want to remind you about our friends, although the Christmas music is still there. That's my fault, Heath, if you're listening or watching. We've had a crazy morning trying to get things fixed around here and ready to roll for 2021. But McFadden Pest Control, it is a new year, and they're due to come service our house as well here in the next couple of weeks. And good thing, because I killed a big spider last night crawling across the back porch.
What kind?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't look. I didn't get close enough, but it looked pregnant, and I was like, oh, God, if I kill this thing and a bunch of babies come out, this is not going to be good, but it wasn't. Oh, thank God. So he'll
That's the worst.
Well, we've had all the rain. They emerge.
It's true.
They emerge. McFadden Pest Control, I've been using them for almost 3 years. And Heath and his staff are just amazing people. If you're in the Tri-County area, I would suggest you just take a look at the website, McFaddenPestControl.com, and let them take care of your home. Let them put your termite bond in place in the summer. Let them take care of the mosquitoes. They do all of that. McFaddenPestControl.com. I will add this to Heath's profile. Even if some of you are not Carolina fans, don't hold this against him. He is a big one. So for you Gamecock fans that are looking for a new pest control service, I would highly recommend the best in the business. That's why they've been doing it for over 40 years. Heath Gunther, McFadden Pest Control, McFaddenPestControl.com. All right, let's hit a quick timeout. When we return, we'll get back into some of these coaching changes and potential coaching changes. How about the LSU staff? How about the staff at Vanderbilt? They hired someone working for CBS? What? Yeah, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
You might not have heard about it. Well, we're going to tell you about that. We've also got an update in hoops. We have Reggie Merriweather to put a bow on the season for Clemson ahead at 2 o'clock this afternoon. How about all these conference bowl results? How do you determine which league was better and things like that, or can you? We're going to talk about all of that and much more. Plus, what day is today? It's a good day. It's a really good day.
It's January 4th, man.
That's right. Right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Speed Dub.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
Family Bingo Night is back. All 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
Hey everybody, what's going on? This is singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, but whenever I want to keep up with the South Carolina Gamecocks or even the Clemson Tigers, I can still tune in to JB and Goldwater because they are always live, loud, and online.
And I sing hallelujah. I do believe it's happening. We're almost to the top of the mountain.
All right, 137. Welcome back. An hour and a half in the books. We're here till 3 today, so hang with us throughout the afternoon. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, stokesvw.com. Hello, Mike, if you're listening or watching. Hello.
Hope you were treated to a nice lunch today by No Water Consulting.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Need to get in on that. That'd be good stuff.
We need some lunch delivered here is what we need.
Yeah. We will. I tell you what, I need to pick up some DB's cheesesteaks one day and bring them by.
Yeah, you do.
Or I'll just have them drop them off for me.
That'll also work well.
Eat them on.
Yes.
How about that? All right, real quick here. You just retweeted this, but from Football Scoop, the Football Scoop staff, a report out by them that Urban Meyer is looking for top dollar to come out of retirement. That is the headline. Shocker there. 6 jobs open in the NFL officially. The Jaguars is the one that Urban Meyer has kind of been connected to the most, I'd say, over the last couple of weeks, and it's really heated up over the last couple of days. The reports have been out there that if he wants it, it's his. And if that's the case, he's saying, well, you're going to have to pay me a lot of money to come fix this problem you've got in Jacksonville, Florida, maybe even like $12 million a year. The Panthers, of course, and I'm getting this from this report here from Football Scoop, paid Matt Rule $9 million a year to leave Baylor and move to Charlotte. And Urban Meyer saying, yeah, I'm going to want much more than that. This year, Bill Belichick was paid $12 million, and that's the most in the league, $1 million ahead of Pete Carroll at 11.
And that's why he's asking for 12, because that's who is the highest paid coach. He wants to be paid like that. It'll be an interesting experiment if Urban Meyer does, in fact, decide that he wants to go back to coaching. I don't think we're going to see him back in college. Yeah. I think if he was going to go back to college, I think Texas probably was it, right?
Maybe Southern Cal, maybe.
But the health concerns are real for him, and I think not having to recruit and the stress of that is probably what's appealing about the NFL, plus a different type of challenge. And in Jacksonville, you can really build because there's a lot of pieces there and money to build in Jacksonville. But I don't know. X's and O's, he's great. I think he would have the respect of the players. I think he could have success. You just don't see it that often. You just don't see it that often when a college guy jumps to the NFL and has a ton.
I don't even think he cares, honestly. If he has a bunch of success in the NFL, I don't think he cares.
Oh yeah, he does. He's got pride.
Well,
he wants to see if he like almost proving to himself, hey, can I go out there and can I do this? Can I win here like I won in college?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I think that's true. But also at the end of the day, like let's say it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say he took the job in Jacksonville or somewhere else. Hopefully, it's not like with the Jets. He would not fit in up there, I don't think, very well. But let's say he did. And it didn't work out after, a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years. We all know the NFL is they're much quicker to pull the trigger than college football. And he leaves $24, $36 million richer or so. And it just didn't work out. I mean, we can all say, oh, well, it didn't work out for Steve Spurrier. It cares. He doesn't care. His legacies in college football always will be. I mean, the one guy that it really worked out for is Pete Carroll, which is great. But, at the end of the day, like Urban Meyer's like, all right, I can go coach the NFL. I'll make $30, $40 million. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't think it would be like if he took a college job, like, look, I want to be the first to win a national championship at, what would that be, 3 schools?
Yes.
It'd be 3 schools. And
it's not the stress of, say, a Shane Beamer who has to go prove himself. No. There's no proving left for Urban Meyer, right?
Yeah.
Totally proven.
No.
So
just go get Richard.
Yes. Go get Richard. It's the stress is really the pressure you're putting on yourself to succeed.
Right.
And whereas if you're still coming up, Shane Beamer, the stress is, hey, can I make it in this business? Can I do this?
Yeah.
Can I be the head guy at a major program? So that's the major difference.
The head guy at Clemson is Dabo Swinney. We'll talk about him and the Tigers with Reggie Merriweather at 2:00. You want to be here for that conversation. The rest of the country in bowl season, it went like this. The MAC, 2-0. Sun Belt, 4-1. The Big Ten, 3-1. Independents went 3-1. The Mountain West, they went 2-1. The American, 1-5. Pac-12, 0-2. Conference USA, 0-6. How about the SEC, 6-2. The Big 12, 5-0. I think I mentioned the Big Ten already at 3-1. And then there's the big black eye, the ACC, 0-6. Wow. Now, 2 of those losses, of course, are because they had 2 teams this year, Notre Dame being part of the Atlantic Coast Conference, 2 teams in the college football playoff. So 0-4 outside of it, 0-6 in total in its entirety. And the bowl season is now finished. Remember, a bunch of opt-outs this year, so the records are all a little bit different. But as we compare those records, those conference records, so here's the thing. If you're an SEC guy or gal, you're going to beat the drum and say, well, we're 6-2. The SEC is, right? And we have a team in the national championship. No shocker that here it is, Alabama, once again. If you're not an SEC guy, you're going to give that title to the Big 12 because they're 5-0. But the Big 12 also did not have a team in the college football playoff. The Tide were there, and they rolled right over Notre Dame, an ACC team. This year. What's more impressive or what's least impressive? The SEC 6-2, the Big 12 5-0, or what's the bigger story, I should say? Is it that or is it the ACC being 0-6?
So my general take on bowls is I get frustrated by the conversations that happen every year after bowl season. Well, because the conference did this, it says that.
Right.
Because X, then Y.
Sure.
So the ACC goes 0-6 in the bowls, and that looks awful. But the bigger picture is that the ACC had a better year this year than they've had in a long time, right? You just mentioned 2 of the teams were in the college football playoff. They happened to get handled, but they were 2 of the best teams in the country, and there's absolutely no debate about that. Miami had a much better year this year. They bounced back. North Carolina. So I don't take bowl season and then lump it into any type of statement about the conference. The same breath that I would say that about the SEC, boasting now that they had 6 wins against top 25 in their bowls.
Most ever.
Good. To me, that doesn't tell me the league is the best it's ever been. I certainly don't think that. But I think, it's bowl season, it's matchups, who opted in, who opted out. There are lots of different things at play. What you do know is that, is it a bit of a black eye? to a degree, I guess, but I just don't think there's a whole lot of weight behind the substance of it. Like, does it really say something about the conference? I don't think so. I've never been one to buy into that about bowl season.
Well, and I think that this year is the year of all years where you can't necessarily just have that one-sided conversation and say, well, the SEC, here they are again, or the Big 12. Wow, man, maybe the Big 12 was the best league in the country. Well, they didn't have a team in the college football playoff. But again, we had this college football playoff conversation earlier. Did anybody really want to run into Oklahoma at the end of the year?
Right.
No, they didn't. But let's also remember Florida had a ton of opt-outs going into that game. Could that game have looked different? Absolutely.
Sure it would have.
What does that mean that Oklahoma wouldn't have actually won the game? No, not at all. But that conversation can also be had about A&M in North Carolina. Who do I think is a better team? I think it's A&M.
Absolutely.
I've thought that for a long time. North Carolina was in that thing until the very end. A&M scored 24 points in the fourth quarter of that game. That's amazing. North Carolina had 4,000 yards of offense opt out and 41 touchdowns. By the way, they also had their best defensive player not in that game because of an opt out. So do I think A&M's a better team? I think they are. They won the game on the field based on what they had. They didn't have any opt outs, and North Carolina did. So I think if you want to have the conversation of bowl season and conference records and comparing leagues, things like that, you have to go through each individual result with a fine-tooth comb, especially this year. You got to figure out who was playing in what games and things like that. All right, so you had a ranked NC State team. I'd say, all right, you had Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami, North Carolina at the top of that league, right?
Yep.
And then you probably had NC State, they're at 5, 6, somewhere.
Yeah, floating around the middle of the pack. They had a better year than we thought they would.
Yeah, upper echelon of the league, probably 5 or 6, maybe 7, but certainly the top half of the league. Kentucky wasn't in the top half of the league, but they beat the Wolfpack by 2 points. How about Ole Miss? 26-20 over Indiana. You look at I don't think the Big Ten was very good this year. Obviously Ohio State was really good, and you had some teams playing better at the end of the year. Northwestern's a good football team. They're a good football team. Wisconsin, I think, was playing well. Iowa was playing well. But Indiana, when you look at the record and what they accomplished, I mean, they're one of the top 3, if not 3 or 4 teams in the league, and Ole Miss beat them. Right? So
without their quarterback.
Without their quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, without their quarterback. Northwestern piles on Auburn 35-19. Auburn didn't have a head coach, so like you got to get, but I'm not that's not taking anything away from Northwestern. I'm not saying that Northwestern would not have won the game anyways. Just my comments a moment ago. You got to go through it with a fine-tooth comb when you look at these results and try to figure out who's the best league and who's the worst league and this, that, and the other. I think I would give the nod to the SEC because they had more teams in the playoff, and they do have a team, the best team in the country, playing, as we know it to be right now, Alabama, for the national championship. I think Georgia had a great win over Cincinnati. That was a great game.
That might be the best win. Let's take out Ohio State beating Clemson. Georgia and the way they beat Cincinnati and how well Cincinnati played. Yeah. I think in bowl season, just in general, the way in which Georgia beat Cincinnati, that's one of the better wins of bowl season.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, because Cincinnati,
they're good.
So the conversation between like our group of guys on New Year's Day, we're watching that, or was it New Year's Eve? Whichever day it was all right. Are you going to come in here and say Georgia?
New Year's Day.
It was one of the two. Are you going to come in here and say Georgia didn't want to, wasn't interested in playing? Cincinnati was more motivated. And then as you watch Georgia make that surge late in the game, you're saying, no, like Georgia's absolutely motivated here. So then my takeaway from that was Cincinnati, win or lose that game, my respect for Cincinnati was legit. Yeah, you lost, but the way you played that game and the way you lost or Georgia won, that tells me that Cincinnati was a pretty damn good team this year, and it was a very impressive win for Georgia.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I like Cincinnati. I mean, so how about West Virginia in the Big 12 that went over Army? Army's really good, like really good. I guarantee you when Army filled that slot in the Liberty Bowl, West Virginia was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, yeah.
They won the game. That's like really – Mississippi State beat Tulsa. we laughed at Mississippi State through the whole year outside of that first game when they beat LSU. Tulsa was a team, man, this team might be pretty good. They're ranked 24th going into the game. They lost, once or something?
Yeah, once or twice.
Once or twice. Mississippi State beat them. They had a losing record. They were 3-7 going into the game. Everybody's like, "What? They shouldn't be in a bowl game." Well, they shouldn't be. It was bowl tie-ins, and there weren't enough teams to play and things like that. But they won. So you can have the conversation however you want to have it. I think so. Danny Cannell. Did you see his tweet this morning?
I saw it, basically asserting that the Big 12 was the best conference this year and didn't have a team in the playoff.
Didn't have a team in the playoff. The system was broken. Yada yada yada. And then it evolved into the wrong conversation. It evolved into what league is better than what. The conversation that should have been had was the one we were having with Nicole Auerbach at the top of our program, which was how do you fix this? Because Oklahoma is one of the hottest teams in the country, and they didn't have a chance to play in a playoff, potentially playing for a national championship. That's the conversation that should be had, not, well, the Big 12 is better. Here's what I can say. I don't give a crap how anybody wants to spin it. It was a horrible postseason for the ACC.
Yeah.
0-6 is 0-6, period, the end. I'll give you the two losses we had two teams in the college football playoff. All right, we had four that weren't, and none of them won. I mean, that's just terrible. Like, you can't win one of those games? That's bad.
But a horrible postseason doesn't mean the league was awful.
No.
It was garbage.
Yeah, I'm not
going. The year was garbage.
No. I'm not going down that road.
Right.
I don't think it was an elite year for them. I think it was upgraded because of the 1 year existence of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I do think Miami's better, and I think North Carolina certainly is on the right track.
Right.
I don't think that the ACC has turned some major corner, and they're going to turn into the SEC in the next year or two. Prove it. But I do think if you're just judging on the postseason itself, it was a horrible postseason for the ACC. So what's more important? I think it's more important that the SEC went 6-2 and that the Big 12 went 5-0 versus the fact that the ACC was 0-6, because the opt-outs and things like that, you just don't ever know how it's going to unfold. But in the same breath, I'll say this: it was terrible. It's a terrible look for the league.
But where you're right is certainly that you got to take each game individually.
Yeah. Fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, fine-tooth comb. Each team individually. I mean, the fact that Northwestern played the way that they played, I mean, that's a nice capper to the year for the Wildcats, right? I mean, Nicole was on saying the year wasn't a success for anybody, right? If you're not in the college football playoff, that's the perception. That's the prism that you view things through in major college football. If you're not in the playoff, it wasn't really a successful season.
Right.
Well, Northwestern had a very successful season, right? Not only did they get to the Big Ten championship game, they pushed Ohio State when they were there. They win the bowl game. They do it in impressive fashion. Don't forget, last year, they were awful. They were terrible.
Yeah.
And they've got a coach who's being rumored about interest in the NFL. So
That's
all
right.
of that together, very impressive for Northwestern. That doesn't make the Big Ten better this year. The Big Ten was trash.
Yeah.
But for Northwestern, that was strong. It was good.
I'm with you. I think this year is the year of all years to not judge a league based on their bowl record at all. Certain games, you could probably pick out certain games.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, again, I'm giving all the credit to Oklahoma for what they did to Florida.
Yeah.
Like, all the credit. But I don't want to dismiss the fact that Florida had opt-outs, and that's the exact same conversation that I give all the credit A&M for what they did to North Carolina, but let's not dismiss the fact that they had a bunch of dudes not in there.
Yeah.
So, like, there are things that they could have been different. Now, here's the big difference of those two games. Oklahoma won by 35 points. 35 points. Like, they were just flat out on a roll. And they did. They rolled. That was a joke of a football game.
You got the sense once Mullins said afterwards that basically our last football game was whenever it was. My guess is the team played with that attitude, right? That's probably been the way it's felt around Gainesville leading up to that game. So the guys get out there and like, whatever. I mean, they played with that attitude. It looked like that was the attitude. So maybe you're just kind of seeing the team kind of resembling its head coach, at least the attitude.
Do have some breaking news here from Football Scoop again, footballscoop.com. This is their time of the year. And as of about 2 minutes ago, they are reporting that Will Muschamp has turned down the opportunity to join Steve Sarkisian's staff as defensive coordinator at Texas. Now, they're crediting Dennis Dodd for this additional information. Dennis Dodd with CBS is reporting that Barry Odom, former Missouri head coach, current Arkansas defensive coordinator is now among Steve Sarkisian's top candidates to fill that role in Austin. But it appears that Will Muschamp will not do that for the second time in his career, and that is running the defense of the Longhorns. So it remains to be seen what his future will look like. I know, over our break, it was rumored that he was a potential candidate at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, but that's not going to work out either. So I don't know what the future holds for Will Muschamp. Maybe he wants to stay in the SEC. What openings are there in the SEC? I mean, LSU is still trying to find a defensive coordinator. Who knows what could happen at Florida if Dan Mullen leaves, but I don't foresee Will Muschamp going back to Gainesville as a defensive coordinator when he used to be a head coach.
No.
Are there any other?
Well, there are more dominoes to fall. And so there will be, could there be more? Maybe, right? Because obviously you got Carolina and then LSU. And I don't think.
Well, I mean, if Barry Odom left Arkansas, that would
then
be
then there's another domino.
Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Because Texas is a little bit better of a job than Arkansas.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just odd hearing all those names. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, all right, football's getting more and more offensive, right? These last couple of years, it's more and more about how many points you can score, not about the best defenses out there. And yet there are a boatload of highly qualified defensive coordinators that are out there, either with a job or looking for a job and probably going to get a job should they want one, like Will Muschamp. But right now, offenses are dominating the landscape of football, both in the NFL and in college.
Well, and here's the thing, that this goes back, over the last decade, that there started to be this trend of defensive coordinators hired in football. We obviously have seen a ton of them in the SEC, in particular in the SEC East. You got Stoops still at Kentucky, Jeremy Pruitt maybe hanging by a thread, but he's still there in Knoxville. You got Kirby Smart in Athens. Muschamp has it hadn't worked out twice for him. Derek Mason didn't work out at Vanderbilt.
Yep.
So you had this trend for a while of hiring elite defensive coordinators, and now it's model's kind of shifted a little bit. And some of these guys, and maybe more in the future, I would say my next guess would be Jeremy Pruitt, will be looking for employment. They've been defensive coordinators, they've become head coaches, they'll go back to
Vanderbilt, by the way, now that you just mentioned that, speaking of, I don't know, my mind jumped to that. That's an open defensive coordinator job right now. I don't think Clark Lee's filled that.
No.
I don't think he's calling the defense either. Notre Dame's defensive coordinator that's now the head coach at Vanderbilt. So that's another opening.
Yeah, and I don't see Muschamp going there.
No, I wouldn't think so.
But Barton Simmons is going to Vanderbilt. Barton Simmons has been working for the 24/7 Sports Network and CBS for quite some time, covered recruiting and a bunch of things in college football. He's been hired. So get this, if you haven't heard, he has been hired as the general manager at Vanderbilt, which is essentially director of player personnel. He's been hired as the GM of the Vanderbilt football team under Clark Lee. And we'll talk to JC Sherbert on Wednesday, our friend who owns the BigSpur.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. This is a guy who I think knows Clark Lee quite well. JC knows Barton well, so he'll be able to expand on this from a personal level. They're colleagues and friends. He's actually now coaching in college football as opposed to just covering it. It's very interesting.
So we've talked a lot, especially going through the Beamer hire and the whole, I wouldn't call it a circus, but the time frame leading up from the Muschamp firing to the Beamer hire, about analysts and different roles that different teams are now utilizing that probably haven't been there predominantly before. That's where guys like Barton Simmons can excel, because they've got a background in more, for them, plenty useful. For the average person, so much useless nonsense that's back there. But can it help a football team? Absolutely it can. There's so much information back there because of the job that he's had, because he's already used to analyzing stuff. The reason Barton Simmons is good at his old job is because he's analyzing. He's breaking down the little things.
Yeah.
That's why you can see some guys have some success when they transition away from that into a type of role with the team. It looks strange on the outside, no doubt. You're doing what? But if you look a little bit deeper and from a creative mindset, It makes a lot of sense.
I think Barton Simmons is an Ivy League guy as well. I think he went to Yale or Harvard or one of those Ivy League schools that I never would dream of getting into. Patriots Point presents the national anthem every day at 1 o'clock right here on our program, patriotspoint.org, white glove certified. If you haven't checked out the Yorktown lately, you should do it. The Yorktown, the USS Laffey, the Clamagore, the Vietnam War exhibit, all available for tour, patriotspoint.org for more. All right, when we return, one final hour, a 3-hour program here to open 2021, the JB and Goldwater Show. When we get back, Reggie Merriweather. He's been with the Tigers all year, the former tailback, now covering Clemson on their radio broadcast. He'll put a bow on the 2020 season for the Tigers that ended at the hands of Ohio State, and he'll tell you what he saw and much more when we return. The JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risk their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston, Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee, but guess what? I can always listen to the JB and Goldwater Show because they are always live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour here on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back to JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Final hour, 3-hour program today as we usher in the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. Darren Goldwater and Jamie Bradford. Tomorrow we'll be back into our 2-hour time slot, 12 to 2. We had a bunch of information to get out today, certainly. Before we get Reggie in here, I do want to make sure we mention this one as well. Doc Holliday not being retained at Marshall is shocking.
Yeah.
The guy is from there, and he's been there for 11 years, 85-54 in Huntington, 6-2 in bowl games. They didn't renew his deal?
No, and basically a legend there. And the year, it was a good year at first, and then the slide. They lost, 3-4 games in a row to end the year?
Yeah.
That's probably
still, though.
There's something probably there.
He has just bled that green for forever.
Yes.
But that is certainly
he's synonymous with Marshall.
Yeah, no doubt. Also, real quick, before we talk about Clemson, a note on their rivals I know we had Wes from Gamecock Central earlier, and we always tell you to trust both of these sources, but we'll refer to the Big Spur on this one from our friend Tony Morrell. He says that Vanderbilt head coach Derek Mason may not work out for Shane Beamer. He has been told that it looks like the leader will not work out, and he is assuming that is Derek Mason. So on to the next one, whoever the DC will be in Columbia. It might not be Derek Mason, according to Tony Morrell with the BigSpur.com.
Maybe it's Muschamp.
It might be Brent Venables.
Sure.
No,
totally.
I'm just
It
kidding.
might be me, too.
I'm just kidding, Reggie Merriweather. What's up, man? Happy New Year.
Man, Happy New Year, fellas. And, I said I wasn't going to bring the negativity in 2021, and then New Orleans, 0-3 in New Orleans. Here it comes again.
I know, all these opt-outs. And the next time that the Tigers are selected to play in New Orleans, you think they'll opt out?
Yeah. I tell you what, the last 3 times that we've gone down there and, tried to perform, it hadn't really worked out. So you got twice with Trevor Lawrence, and then one time with Kelly Bryant against, Alabama and Ohio State, which obviously, if you'd have told me that Justin Fields was going to throw 6 or 7 touchdowns and play like he played, I don't think anybody would have believed you. But, the big thing in that game was obviously, being a defensive play caller, because there's a lot of things that happen. Offensive coordinator for Clemson was out.
Yep.
So you had to back up there and Streeter. And obviously, you talk about people stealing signals, blah, 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 whatever Ryan Day was talking about earlier in the week. So they did a really good scheme for the offense and the defense, and their scheme just really worked out. We weren't able to make, corrections on the fly, and the better team won. They got pushed around on the offense and defensive line. Clemson did. Yeah. And, you think about, how great this coaching staff is and how long they've been together there at Clemson. And it's only a matter of time till you get beat. You can't continue to, go up against talented teams and these talented coaching staffs and not expect to get a mollywhopping every now and then. But obviously what Ohio State was able to do was really incredible. And that team that took the field reminded me a little bit of like LSU. You felt like it was just destined for them to play and be the great team that everybody thought they were, despite the ranked 11th and all that talk about, Dabo and, smack talk to Ryan Day. None of that matters. When you put the same Jimmies and Joes on the field, guys of equal talent, you know what I mean? You expect the scheme to work the way you designed it. And obviously Ryan Day and his coaching staff, the scheme that they put together, it worked perfectly. And they came out on top of the W.
How impactful was it that Elliott was not there calling the plays and it was Streeter instead?
And here's the thing. I think Streeter did a good job. I think he called the game well. Here's the difference. The difference is, the first probably 20 plays, 30 plays, whatever it may be. I don't know how many plays that they scripted for this game. But in preparation, right, script plays to start a game, okay? They come out in this package, this is what we're going to do. And, 14, it was 14-14 in the first quarter, right? After that, I think the play calling and some of the situations that Ohio State put forward, I think we got a little lost and we went away from what Tony would normally do, if that makes sense. So getting the ball on the outside, trying to run different screen plays, offset this great defensive line and the linebackers of Ohio State, we kind of went away from that. And then it takes a long time to set up big plays, and we just didn't have time to do it. Trevor was still threw for 400 and something yards, a couple TDs, but it's hard to get those big chunk plays when you don't have time to throw the football. Now, if you look at what Justin Fields was able to do and the type plays that they drew up, I mean, obviously they had a couple guys running just wide open, but I mean the chunk plays that they had, not obviously throwing the ball but running the football. I mean, they had probably 10 plays over 20 yards in that game, and some big time gainers. They probably had 5 or 6 plays for 40 plus in that game as well. So it's just it's hard to say that again, Tony Elliott was the difference in this game. Skowski and a couple guys being out was the difference in this game when you lose by 28 something points. But it definitely didn't help when you talk about being able to scheme and work on the fly. Brandon Streeter, don't take anything away from him, man. He called a great game, but it might have been a little bit different with Tony Elliott in there.
Yeah, certainly. And I've heard some people that generally, Reggie, just don't know what they're talking about, criticize some of the play calling and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, wait a second, hold on here. look, I get it. Ohio State, for the most part, made Clemson fairly one-dimensional on offense, and they had to really throw the football to move it, and he threw it nicely. But it wasn't Brandon Streeter and Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne and Cornell Powell and those guys that gave up almost 50 points to Ohio State. It was the defense. And,
yeah,
I mean, they scored 40. They scored 3 touchdowns in the second quarter, and that's where this thing got away. But, so let me go back, though. Like, it doesn't matter whether people believe the outside world, in my opinion. It doesn't matter whether fans believe that, Brent Venables is stealing signals or Dabo Swinney should have ranked Ohio State first, 11th, or 111th. It doesn't matter what we believe. What does matter is what Ohio State's locker room believed. And do you think that Ryan Day and that staff how good of a job did they do in making that football team believe that the world was against them? Very similar to what Dabo's done for years at Clemson. Put that chip on their shoulder, give them some extra motivation to go through the practice reps and things like that. How much of an impact did that have, and in return have on the game?
Well, as much as I do, if you've played the game, you know how emotional it is, right? And a lot of people don't really realize this, but I think the NFL is kind of the same way. So you play 16 game schedule. I mean, stuff starts to get repetitive. So, okay, we take these clips and shots from the media and whoever else, and then we try to use that in our repertoire to, hype up our team because they get a little burnt out. So, yeah. Dabo Swinney does a good job with bulletin board material, hands down. Now, Ohio State only playing 6 games, fresh legs. I don't know how burnt out they would have been. But, I mean, of course, hearing the rhetoric from all the fans and naysayers saying that they shouldn't have been into the title game. They ranked 11th, and, they just don't. Justin Fields as a chip on the shoulder for, throwing 6 interceptions, not playing his best matchup. And, obviously they had a lot of stuff, to kind of get off their chest. Now, here's the big thing here. When you talk about an emotional game and them putting it all on the field against Clemson, hopefully they didn't use all that juice in one shot, you know what I mean? Because they have to play Alabama still. So hopefully they have some stuff to play for here for the national championship. But, again, hats off to the coaching staff in Ohio State because they played this game perfectly. I don't think they could have done anything different in this game to make the outcome any better. Because, I mean, you think about it, they had 350 or almost 400 something yards rushing in that championship game. And they absolutely knew from watching the film that they could run the football against Clemson. Now, one of the best things about the RPO is you have an athletic quarterback who can make the throws down the field and also run the football. Justin Fields and the RPO worked immaculately. I mean, he couldn't miss. I mean, a couple times where the defender was right on top of the guy and he dropped the ball in. And when we did get pressure on him, he was able to get outside the pocket and we were in man coverage and he was able to make, some big time plays with his feet. And even in the second half, when he wasn't running the football, I mean, you still had Sermon in there, getting 8, 9, 10 yards a pop, going up against the linebackers and the smaller defensive backs that were trying to come up and tackle him. So, in my eyes, again, when you talk about the scheme and what they had going for Clemson, I think they did a really good job. And, I take this with a grain of salt. When you talk about people stealing signals, right? Like, come on now. It takes a lot to be able to steal signals in this day and time. I mean, people have all these gimmicks and stuff, all this crap that they say. But from my standpoint, when you watch Venables from the sideline, he sees what your team has. I mean, he's got a play sheet. They look at film. They do everything, scout and everything else. So he's got a play call sheet. He calls a basic package. You get lined up. He sees what you got on the field. Then he calls his play. What you saw in that game the other night, Ohio State, not only did they scheme for that, right? They had the perfect play call just about every time because they waited. They waited when they got the personnel in. They waited when they got in the huddle. And then as soon as they called the play, they ran up to the line. And within like 10 seconds, right, of the play clock, they ran the play. And how can you call blitzes when you don't see the alignment? How can you call from the field and do all this type stuff when you don't see what they're aligned in and all this type of stuff. So again, I think they schemed it well. I think they did a really good job. And I mean, they just had the number. I mean, they just had Clemson's number, much like LSU last year in the championship. They just had their number. So great game. It was amazing. It was really good.
Talking with Reggie Merriweather here. I just want to circle back to the Dabo stuff before the game because it struck me as odd, right? Dabo always plays up the underdog role, even when they're undefeated and killing everybody. They're the underdog. No one's giving us any credit. And then coming into this game, it was a lot of slights on Ohio State, putting Clemson up on a pedestal almost. And it was like a 180 from what Dabo typically does. If it wasn't bulletin board material for Ohio State, could that at least have negatively affected Clemson?
Yeah, I think so. But, I mean, again, too, best is the standard. You know, we talk about that all the time. They have that up in the locker rooms. It's on the stadium. Best is a standard. So when you don't play to your absolute best, when you play down to the competition, you lose. So I think they didn't play really down, but they didn't play to their best. And this game, it obviously showed. It showed in the secondary. It showed in the defensive scheme. And, again, Trevor Lawrence threw for 400, but Travis Etienne didn't have 50 yards rushing, I don't think. And I was like, you know, that's kind of one of the telltale signs. If Travis Etienne doesn't have a good day, this Clemson offensive line doesn't have a good day, then Clemson is probably not going to win. They're not going to have a good day offensively. And I think that was the difference in the game. I think they got manhandled up front, and you know, they just were able to win the individual matchups. And you know, again, when a team has over 500, 600 yards of offense, that means your defense had a very long day, and they crushed the time of possession as well in that first half. You know, and there's only a certain amount of things you can do before the offense, you know, again, starts to get the better of you. And any team that can run 70, 80, 90 plays, I mean, they're going to get the best of your defense every time.
And I love how you've approached this. Look, Ohio State just basically kicked our ass is what happened. I mean, it was just one of those days, you know, and they just walked out of there and put a stamp on it. Now they're going to have an enormous test in front of them with Alabama. I want to go to the Skowski hit in this game because, you know, he was ejected on that just like he was last year. And, you know, we can all argue whether we want to, whether that was targeting or not targeting. We can argue the rule all we want to. I loved his tweet. He said, "It's on me. I got to learn to play with my head up." And he's right. Unfortunately, he's right about that. I don't like the rule, Reggie. I saw one in the NFL yesterday. Quarterback let go of the ball right when he got hit, and it called targeting on this guy, and he did nothing except land on him. What else are you supposed to do? I mean, I do think that football at times is going too far to protect quarterbacks. I appreciate that they are protecting quarterbacks, and I appreciate that they're protecting everybody in the sport. But what did you think about the call? Was it the correct call in your opinion? And how did that maybe change the game a little bit?
Well, I don't really think it changed the game at all. Okay. Like I said, again, when you start talking about, you know, almost 400 yards of rushing in that game, I honestly don't think, you know, that him being out was that big of a deal. Now, on the targeting call, I thought this year the NCAA made it a point to make less of those calls because they had to be in a certain category, meaning they had to hit, you know, there had to be 3 or 4 things for it to be called targeting. So for my instance, leading with the crown or a helmet is definitely a targeting offense. But at this point, it's like it wasn't against a defenseless receiver or quarterback or defensive player. He did not launch, all right? He did not leave his feet. He did not launch. And it wasn't to the head or neck area to a defensive player. So for me, I thought it needed to hit all 3 of those boxes for it to be called targeting. So, you know, was it a vicious hit? Yes. Was it a kind of like malicious deal where he intended to, you know, take his knee out or do something like that? I don't think it was. And, you know, for a player of his caliber to be ejected from a big-time game like this, you know, 2 years in a row, I mean, obviously, you know, you need to learn from your mistakes. So, you know, shame on him. But I think they need to revisit the rule again and make sure that it's consistent because this year, again, for the third year or second year it's been in the refs rule book, I don't think it's been consistent throughout the league and throughout play. And kicking guys out of the game, I mean, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So, maybe they need to go back to, 15-yard penalty. Hey, this is the first personal foul. The next one he's ejected, that type deal, or what. But, again, consistency across all leagues, all platforms, that's what it needs to be. And I don't think it's consistent in the way that they call it. And his absence was definitely felt. But when you get up around 600 yards of offense,
that's true.
Justin Fields doing it through the air, I don't think that would have made a difference at all.
That's a good point.
Reggie, I got in a conversation with a buddy of mine watching the game, watching all the pressure surrounding Trevor Lawrence and his seemingly uncomfortable stature in the pocket and facing all that pressure and his unsteadiness with the ball when he was under pressure. Did anything about Lawrence's performance surprise you?
No, I thought he played a great game. And in that instance, I mean, he made some throws that still make you go, wow. And if you looked at that game and you said, well, he still threw for 400, he played well. A few things he could have done differently. I mean, he did have a turnover. He did have an interception there late, which ball got batted into a guy's hand. So, turnovers I can see. You got to play better. Protect the football if you run it. Other than that, I think he's still going to be the number one overall pick. I mean, the guy has a fantastic arm. He's 6'6". He can see over the line. He can make all the NFL throws, and he's got a great head on his shoulders. Obviously he needs to cut that mustache, but other than that, I think he's good. I think he's good to go. But I tell you what, the kid is everything that's advertised. I think he's a great guy at heart. I think he's got a lot of potential at the next level. Hopefully he goes to a decent team that can protect them. But in this game here, if your strength is the offensive line, hey, 5-6 step drop, make sure you get those big time throws in there, fine. If your strength is not the offensive line, quick game, get the ball out before they can get pressure to you. And that's what I think is the difference between the play calling in Streeter and Tony Elliott. I think when we did quick game before, I thought we were able to kind of get on the edges of the defense because the offensive line did not play well. They were getting pressure with 3 guys at some points, and I'm just like, man, wow. But again, when you've got the same caliber athletes on the field, scheme definitely helps, and I think they just out-schemed us. And it was a great game, great game. Still went 10-2, and I think a lot of delusional fans out there who really don't pay attention to the game, watch the game, are wanting to go somewhere different, with a few different coaches. But again,
oh come on,
if you pay attention to this game, you see the athletes that they have out there. Again, Clemson has a bright future, man. And 10-2, you lost to a really good team that's playing for the national title, who has a really good chance to take Bama down. So I like the matchup against Bama and Ohio State, and may the best team win.
Yeah, I think it'll be a blast of a game. Yeah,
fans can be nuts.
Look,
what do you want?
The entitlement is just unreal. You think about going to CFP 6 times, playing for 2 or 4 national championships, winning 2. And it's just like, come on, guys, be realistic. In a year of COVID where, teams only played a handful of games, we weren't supposed to be playing football at all. We got a chance to play. They end up in the CFP and get beat by a really good team that could eventually win it all. I mean, come on now.
No, Mike Tyson said that best. Social media has allowed people to say things they generally wouldn't say, or that would generally get them punched in the face if they said it to somebody's,
like Mike Tyson
in public. Yeah. Let me not to get off track here, but let me go. I want to go back to this targeting thing, Reggie, because you were a running back. So I want to have this conversation with you. And you were pretty, as Hayes says, you weren't good enough to play in the SEC, but you were pretty good. Hey, Hayes says that, not me. You know that. But so you're toting the football, Reggie. And I've asked this, Penn Wagers, right? Longtime official.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've talked to Penn about this before, and I love Penn. I respect Penn. He's been doing this forever, but I never got a good response out of it. And I'm still searching for this response. So it could be anybody, but for the sake of having the conversation with Reggie, a former running back, we're going to have it this way. You're running, you have the football, you're the ball carrier, and somebody comes to make a tackle. Doesn't matter who it is. And Reggie, your job, right, is to protect the football when impact is anticipated. Is that correct? As a ball carrier?
Yeah, correct.
All right. You want to protect the football. So a lot of times, most times, when you're a ball carrier, I mean, if you see impact coming or a tackle coming from wherever it is, and you go down to protect the ball, just naturally, as a ball carrier, you're going to dip your head. Mm-hmm. You're going to do that, protecting the football. You're trying to almost crouch as you're running the football to make sure that sucker doesn't pop out and you don't lose possession. But sometimes when that happens, a defensive player, no matter who it is, to no fault of his own, even if he's tackling with his head up, will make forcible contact with the crown of the helmet, or it might at least look that way, and they'll throw a flag and say, well, that's targeting. And I'm sitting here watching this saying, and I know that's not what necessarily happened the other day, because Skowski did put his head down and he should have had his head up. But I'm watching these plays throughout the entire year, Reggie, and I'm going, now wait, how, if you're a defender, can you anticipate what the ball carrier is going to do with his head? You can't. And then they throw a flag for targeting and you're ejected from the game. And I think that's where this part of we're looking for indicators, right? There has to be an indicator to throw a flag. Mm-hmm. And part of the indicator is, Reggie mentioned it, launching, or if you lead with the crown of your helmet. Those are indicators. That's what Skowski got popped for. But maybe there's some flexibility in the rule to where if there's not an indicator necessarily on the defensive side of the football, but forcible contact is made, and it's because the offensive player unfortunately made a move to create forcible contact, maybe they could somehow minimize that penalty to 15 yards and you sit out a play or a series or something, as opposed to an entire game. I mean, I think that's a little excessive when it's not the defensive player's fault.
Yeah, I agree with you. First and foremost, if you have ever played running back, right, keep your head on a swivel. You're taught to protect not only yourself but the football, because you're in traffic all the time. Keep your head on a swivel. So for me, I learned a long time ago, right? 2 things you don't do. One is lead with the crown of your helmet, because you could really hurt yourself, right? Seen a lot of people get carted off the field with neck injuries, that type of stuff. So never lead with your helmet. And 2, never jump. Jump, you're probably get something bad's probably going to happen. But obviously, if I'm playing defense and if you can't see it, you can't hit it. So you got to keep your head up, right? Obviously, the thing that irks me the most about the Skowski hit, right? If it was a running back, wide receiver, tight end, whoever it may be, do you think they still would have called that hit? And that's my point. Does it have to be a quarterback, or can it be anybody? I know a lot of times we see tight ends, running backs, wide receivers lower their head in anticipation of getting hit as well.
Right.
They don't call targeting on them.
Right.
So, why is it targeting for the defender to lower his head? But obviously, player safety is the number one key, right? And, you got to keep people safe. So they throw the flag every time. But for me, if I'm Justin Fields, I slide or I go down. And obviously, if you don't go down, you're going to get put down. This is not Pee Wee League. You know what I mean? So, in my eyes, it was crown of the helmet for sure, but I don't think it was anything intentional, malice or something like that, where he was like, I'm going to put this guy out of the game. I'm going to, take his knees out and break him in half or something like that. I just think it was just maybe he thought he was going to slide and he put his head down. I don't know. But, to get kicked out of the game for that type of hit that wasn't vicious to me. I've seen some vicious hits. I've got knocked out before. I've been viciously knocked out before, and that was not vicious to me. But, again, different ball game, protect the quarterback, protecting players. So I see them throwing the flag. I just think if they're going to keep the rule, it needs to be the same in every league, and it needs to hit all of those boxes to be considered targeting. Now, if they change the rule next year and say, hey, out for a quarter, out for a half, whatever it may be, I'd be cool with that. but to lose a player for the entire football game because of targeting that does not hit every category, I think that's a miscue from the league.
If we can get uniform officiating on everything across all leagues, that would be that would be a huge step in the right direction.
It all needs to be under
football.
one umbrella, anyways.
Yes,
It's ridiculous that we have league officials. I mean, it's 2020.
I still don't know what a catch is. I have no clue what a catch is in college.
No, I mean, this needs to all be under one umbrella. All right, look, final couple questions here. We're going to let you run. We won't see Clemson on the field until spring practice, whenever they announce those dates, which will be in the next, month and a half or so, somewhere in there. They're going to lose guys. I mean, Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, they're off to the NFL. Of course, they'll always return talent. They'll continue to do that. Probably still a couple of big names we're waiting on to see what their futures look like. Everybody's got an extra year, and Clemson certainly is going to be able to take advantage of that with some players that are currently on this roster, Reggie. But as we anticipate spring practice, by the way, remember Clemson will open the 2021 college football season against the Georgia Bulldogs in Charlotte, North Carolina on September the 4th. As we get towards spring practice and we start to leave 2020 in the rear view and look ahead, what will be some of the things that you'll look back on and say, look, it was a great year, 10-2, but this spring we need to improve on blank. What are those things we'll be looking for in the next couple of months?
Well, I think the two things that injury-wise, I mean, you get a lot of guys back. You get two defensive ends, pretty much all the wide receivers that were out, Nagano, Latson. Hopefully we get Ross back. The running back room is going to be something to keep an eye on, and obviously the secondary as well. So for me, some of the big things is you're going to have a pretty much a new offensive line. Going to have some new faces again on that defensive front, that secondary. It's going to be pretty much a brand new team next year with when you got 20-something seniors leaving. I don't think guys are going to opt back in for that the year because this year was a free year. I don't see any guys really doing that. If they do, maybe one or two. But for me, finishing as one of the most winningest classes in college football history, I think that's probably enough. But hey, you never know. But obviously, Big Cinco coming back. Number 5, DJ Uiagalelei. That's going to be the big thing for this offense. I think they're going to be really good at wide receiver. I think running backs are going to be really good. I think the offensive line with new guys that are coming in probably need to be tweaked a little bit. But having DJ at quarterback, we saw what he could do in a couple games this year. But he's really going to be the catalyst to make this offensive bus drive. And then as far as defense, next year I think we convert from the 3-4 back to a 4-3 because we'll have all those young guys back, and then we'll have Tyler Davis, of course, again, but we'll have Breesy back, all those guys, and I think they can play D tackle. And then we'll have 2 of the defensive ends, and I think we got like a 5-star defensive tackle coming in too. So we'll have some more meat up front. So I think they can go back to that 4-3. And then we've got Jones at the linebacker, Mike linebacker coming back, and we've got 2 inside guys we'll be doing. But obviously, again, changing that front to be able to help against the run and go back to a more traditional defense, I think that's going to be better for us. And then as far as just getting some of the young guys in that we got in this 2021 class and a couple of guys from the 2020 class that didn't really play, getting those guys up to speed and pace, and then go for another ACC run. I don't foresee anybody besides probably North Carolina and Miami that can play with the Tigers again, just up front physically. But you never know. Like you said, every game is a blessing to be able to go out there and play. Every game is a blessing to be able to go out there and win. As far as the coaching staff, I hope they stay intact, but you'll probably see a few guys leave here pretty soon. Probably not the main core of coaches, but you'll see assistants and stuff like that go get different jobs and stuff too. But
wow,
I'm excited. Like I said, again, this is a young team. They've got a lot of guys coming back, and that's the best thing about college football is, day in and day out, you've got guys that are proving themselves in the classroom and on the field, and it's exciting to see them on any day of the week play and, just blossom. I think that's one of the biggest things here. We get to see DJ, take over for the great Trevor Lawrence, who is one of the most winningest quarterbacks ever. I think he went 34-2 in his career. So that's pretty cool. And then get to see Travis Etienne as well, who pretty much broke every rushing record ever at Clemson. And then in the FBS as well, too, see him get replaced. And then hopefully we get to see Justin Ross back, which is the guy that, dropped everybody's mouths in that Alabama game with his catches. And we get to see that young talent back. And, very young football team, very talented guys. And, man, just, hope to see them blossom this coming year and just, continue to have success.
Well, there will be no shortage of talent, no doubt. They've recruited well again, and we'll keep an eye on the staff, too, as you mentioned, and see if there are a couple of names that defect for other positions in the future. But we'll leave it there. Reggie, we've spent a lot of time with you on a Monday afternoon. We're going to give you some time off. How about that? We'll get you back, though, as it starts getting closer to spring practice. But most importantly, I know we wished you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year before we took our break a couple of weeks ago. We'll double down on that. Happy New Year, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. It has been an incredibly interesting season. It's been a long one, no doubt. But as always, you do an excellent job. 10-2, Tigers finish the year in the college football playoff semifinal. Thank you for everything, my friend. It's great to have your friendship. And by the way, thank you for my Christmas text. I appreciate that. Thanks for thinking of us.
Hey, man, I appreciate you guys, man. And as always, go Tigers. And, hey, I'll tell you what, one thing to look for in this national championship, it will be Justin Fields, because obviously these two guys are Heisman Trophy candidates, and we get the Heisman Trophy. Is it Wednesday, Thursday? Heisman Trophy?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yeah, so it's tomorrow, Tuesday. So hopefully one of those guys will win it. Hopefully it goes to that wide receiver, though, from Alabama. But I tell you what, the two guys who are watching this game is definitely the quarterbacks here. And Justin Fields, again, had a great game against Clemson. But, we all like to think that it's a fluke, but it may not be. So hopefully he can go out there and play well against Alabama and really prove himself. And he's going to be a high draft pick, man. I like the guy. I love his play. But, yeah, wishing those guys the best. And as always, go Tigers.
He was zipping them in there the other night, man. He threw some darts across the field. And I don't know how they were caught.
Yes,
he
did.
Wow.
Yes, he did.
I've said it a couple times this year. The guy's a wizard, man. When he's at his best, it's something.
He threw some missiles in that game the other night, no doubt. Reggie, thank you, buddy. Have a wonderful week. We appreciate you as always.
All right, guys. See ya.
There you go, Reggie Merriweather, former tailback at Clemson. Time for our final timeout. 20 minutes to go in an extended version of the JB Goldwater Show. So hang tight. We'll be right back.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
2:40, final segment here on a Monday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control, McFaddenPestControl.com to get rid of all those little bugs that you found crawling out when you're putting away all the Christmas stuff. McFaddenPestControl.com, have them come out and take care of it just like we do here in the next couple of weeks. Our appointment is all set with Heath and the team, McFadden Pest Control here in the Lowcountry. By the way, so the 2021 dates TBA still on the league games. But the 2021 Clemson schedule, if you haven't checked, they do open with Georgia in Charlotte, in the
Duke's Mayo, whatever they're gonna
call that now. Yeah, it used to be called the Belk Kickoff.
Yeah, something like that. It's tied to the bowl.
Yeah, it used to be called the Belk Kickoff. Now it's probably, I guess,
it's got to be Duke's Mayo. Yeah.
The following Saturday, September the 11th, they'll play host to South Carolina State. And then their other 2 non-conference games are UConn.
Tough.
Wow. And of course, South Carolina and Columbia on November the 27th. Their ACC games set up this way, unless they are changed because things were changed a little bit this year.
Yes.
But as of now, the 4 ACC games in 2021 for Clemson: Boston College, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. Those are the home games. The 4 ACC road games: Louisville, NC State, Pitt, Syracuse. So, a really good path again to the college football playoff. That Georgia game obviously is going to set the tone for the entire year.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Because you're in the ACC, if you drop the Georgia game, you now have no more margin for error. You can't lose again.
No, not really.
I can assure you, a 2-loss team out of the ACC is not getting in the playoff.
I don't.
It's not going to happen.
I mean, again,
not going to happen.
Here we go back to our should the playoff be expanded ordeal. But
let's assume it'll be 4 next year. You lose that Georgia game, you got no margin for error. You run the table after that. So. Run it after that. Okay, but lose again.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. In the South Carolina game, I know there are some Tigers out there who think, well, we lost the game this year. That they got to get that game in Memorial Stadium. It's not going to happen. Ray Tanner and South Carolina are not going to let that happen. You lost the game, but it is what it is. You can't just flip that game to Clemson. That's going to flip. That flips everything. Both of these teams have contracts with other schools that you then have to go back down the road and renegotiate. There's no chance, from what I understand, that game will be anywhere but Williams-Brice Stadium.
I wouldn't expect to see a lot of flip-flopping at all because, look, it's a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
it's
nothing.
Not like they just chose to.
Right. There's nothing we could have done about this. There's nothing Clemson or Carolina or any school could have done about this. So now let's move forward and let's find the fastest way to move forward and put that behind us.
Right. Nick Saban, 14 years ago today, moved forward as the Alabama head coach. I just figured I'd mention this. This is remarkable. In 14 years to the day. By the way, you know who Bama wanted to hire? Steve Spurrier. He said, you need to call Saban. They wanted to hire him away from South Carolina after what was a 6-6 2000. No. That was the 6-6 2007 season. They wanted to hire him away and bring him to Tuscaloosa, and he told them no. He was happy in Columbia. You need to call Saban. They did, and it worked out because since then.
Do you get a finder's fee for this? Because Spurrier deserves something for giving them Saban.
Something. You need to call Saban. Well, at that point in time, I mean, Nick obviously was a decorated college football coach, but Coach Saban was at that point a flamed out NFL guy.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. And, remember Muschamp was with him down there in Miami as well. And it didn't work out. I mean, he was like Spurrier. He was just a former NFL guy that it didn't work out. And who knows what's going to happen next. It worked out in Tuscaloosa. 164 wins to date. 164 wins. Think of 14 seasons. times 10 wins a year gets you to 140.
Right, 10 and change.
He's averaging like 12 plus wins a year. They only play 12. That means you're in the postseason every year doing your thing. 5 national championships, 98 weeks ranked number 1 by the AP, 33 first round draft picks.
Yeah, again,
it's a remarkable resume.
I mean, if they haven't yet, Bama should cut Spurrier a check for whatever they think is fair. Thanks. Thank you for turning us down. Thank you for suggesting Saban. It's good.
Yeah.
Here's your money.
It's just a remarkable feat. I don't know when his time will be up. Some have said that if he wins it this year, maybe he would look to retire. I don't think he will personally, but he'll go down. I think he already is the greatest college football coach ever. I think he is the greatest coach ahead of Bear Bryant. And if he wins tomorrow, that stamp will just be more firmly cemented than it's ever been. And
he doesn't seem like a guy who's ready to walk away to me.
I don't. Why? No. Why? Why? For what?
Yeah, and
I mean, I know you want to go out on top, but why?
Selfishly, I hope he doesn't, because I don't want to deal with those Dabo going to go to Alabama. No,
he's not.
Right.
He's not going to Alabama.
Yeah.
At least as it
and I don't want to deal with it.
Stands today. There's no chance. What day is today on the handy dandy National Day calendar? It's a good day.
Is it?
It's National Trivia Day.
Is it?
I should have
forgot to mention Dog and Duck's got all their themed trivias going on right now. All 3 of their locations.
I ate at Dog and Duck on Saturday.
Did you?
Did you
get a game day burger?
No, I got the wings. I got the smoked wings. As I was walking out, I was like, I should have called Darren. We took the kids to
you
Sky
tweeted
Zone.
about it. Yeah.
With my family, just had the kids jumping around, and we went over there, and oh my gosh, those wings were unbelievable.
Yeah, they're good.
Killer.
They're good.
And the fries are killer too.
Yeah.
Killer. So happy National Trivia Day. Head to Dog and Duck for that. When is that?
Oh, they got trivia days all throughout the week.
Okay,
so,
just go to the website.
Yeah, Dog and Duck Family Pubs.
It is National Missouri Day. If you're a fan of the Show Me State, there you go. Celebrate style.
Great.
Get some trivia or something. It is National Thank God It's Monday Day. I've never said that before, but I guess we'll say that today. It's the first Monday of the new year, so there you go.
Yeah, I was all excited to get back on the show. I mean, it's a strong 180 from like the last 7 days of my life to normal again.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind for the last 2 weeks for me. The kids out of school, and it is. You can celebrate all those days with this National Spaghetti Day.
I haven't had pasta in a while.
Yeah, there you go. Have it tonight.
I might. That's a good idea.
I don't know if you can do spaghetti in your air fryer.
You can do everything in the air fryer.
Again,
everything.
The local news. We did speak with Wes Mitchell earlier. Of course, Wes with Gamecock Central. We have him on every week. We also have our friend JC Sherbert on every week with thebigspur.com. There was no news when we spoke with Wes, but since then, the Big Spur is reporting that it looks like it will not be Derek Mason in Columbia as the next defensive coordinator of the Gamecocks. But waiting to confirm that, we'll keep our eyes peeled, certainly, to see if he is or is not the next hire to be the DC. Torian Gray as the defensive backs coach, potentially still out there. Folks feel really good about that, but that is not official either, nor is a strength and conditioning coach official yet in Columbia. But we'll have more on this throughout the week, and obviously some things could land today. The Board of Trustees is approving 8 contracts in Columbia today, 8 of them. And, of course, 2 positions have not been named, and then the one off field, which is the strength and conditioning coach at South Carolina.
Right.
So certainly going to keep our eyes on that. It is hoop season, and we certainly look forward to diving much more into college basketball. Clemson ranked 19th in the latest AP poll, but per the net rankings, which are now out for the first time this year, they're 15th in the country. Now, I would caution any fan from getting too caught up in net rankings at this point in time. First of all, they're the first net rankings of the year.
Yes.
Second of all, games have been all whacked out. I mean, Carolina's played, 4?
Right. Some teams have played 10 plus. Some teams have played 4, 3.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
But yes, it's interesting to look at. It's a good thing to keep track of because it does obviously matter. But yeah, I wouldn't get worked up about it yet.
No, it's a starting point. I'd say come back to this in about a month and really take a look at it. But as they come out each week, we'll kind of take a peek. Here are the state net rankings. Clemson at 15, Winthrop 39th, Furman 56th, Wofford 88th, Carolina 103, Coastal Carolina 138, the Citadel 146. How about the College 270, Upstate at 292, Presbyterian at 311, and Charleston Southern at 331.
That's pretty close to the bottom.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
what, are they at 346? Is that the number?
It's
something like that
in there.
Yeah,
it's fairly close to the bottom, but I wouldn't get too caught in those. It's probably, especially if you're a South Carolina fan. Now, it's a little bit different if you're a Clemson fan because you're starting at 15 in the net rankings, and they've and deservedly so. They've had a heck of a start to the season.
Yeah.
But starting at like where Carolina is, right there in the 100 range, you just haven't played enough games. Like if they come out and play well to open the season or the SEC season, then that will certainly change a lot of that quickly. The more games you play, the better.
Right. It'll change everything. I'll say this though, for Clemson fans, be cautiously optimistic. That's okay right now because the ACC is a jumbled bag of who knows what, and Clemson is one of the better teams in the league right now. So it's fair to be cautiously optimistic as we are now into January about the possibilities for Clemson this year.
Well, by record, they have the best record in the league. They share it with Virginia Tech at 8-1. You got Louisville at 7-1, NC State at 6-1, and so is Syracuse at 6-1 as well.
Virginia Tech still only has one loss, huh?
They still only have one loss. Yeah.
Penn State, by the way. That's
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's right. So obviously a lot of that can change, but I mean, North Carolina at 6-4, Miami at 4-4. You got Duke at 3-2, and they're still in the top 25. I mean, a lot of this stuff's going to change.
Yeah.
So it's just all right now. It's a jumbled mess. We knew it would be in college basketball. This will be the most difficult selection. This will be the most difficult year the selection committee's ever had. Ever.
I wonder. I think that would be a fun conversation to have because in terms of just pure difficulty, in the end, right? You're going by the numbers. You're going by what the numbers are telling you. You've got your conference champs that are going to be in. It will be strange because you're not going to have the blue blood guarantees because they just haven't been playing that well yet. But I'd like to hear from someone. Maybe we'll get Les Robinson on to say, how tough would it be in a year that is so different from others? It'd be interesting.
Yeah, no doubt, man. There's no doubt. How about the Wildcats, by the way? Kentucky just 2-6.
Yeah, they got issues
just to start the year, but it's certainly been a challenge. And Frank Martin's guys, back on the court, and we'll see what happens. They still haven't played a league game. They just played their first game in a month against Florida A&M. I know some people looked at that result. It was a win, and they thought, wow, what's going on? Well, they haven't played in a month. And he said it was remarkable that they even found a way to win that game 78-71. They do have Texas A&M coming up later on this week, 9 o'clock ESPNU. That's January the 6th, which will be this Wednesday night. So a good opportunity to get off on the right foot for South Carolina basketball. No doubt about that. Still time to get in a quick text or call if you'd like, 843-321-8893, 843-321-8893. We've had a lot to kind of get in today. Thanks to Nicole Auerbach, Wes Mitchell, and Reggie Merriweather, all for joining us on our program. A lot of this coaching stuff is kind of changing. One thing we didn't really get into a whole lot is Clemson and Ohio State. I think for this is going to sound awkward, and I know if you're watching this and you're not like a Carolina fan and you look at me and you see what I'm wearing in my cup and stuff like that, you're going to think I'm being harsh. I'm not. The feel that I got from across the country was that going into that game this past weekend, Clemson was Ohio State. Like generally, Ohio State's the team everybody can't wait to see lose. There are a lot of people pulling against Clemson, and I think a lot of it had to do with Clemson, but I also think a lot of it had to do with people just didn't want to see Clemson and Alabama play again.
It just success. Once you start having the success that Clemson is having, people root against you. People root against Alabama all the time. If you're not the guy on top, if you're not the one always winning, man, do you want that person to lose? Because feel my pain for a little bit. So I think that's what it was. The sense was, all right, kind of had enough of them. I will say this though. I think the reaction, and I'm interested to see kind of how it goes for the next couple of days, maybe leading up to the national championship game, and then depending how Ohio State plays in it, the national reaction of, wait a second, is Clemson really reloading? Has Clemson taken a step back because of what we saw against Ohio State, because of how they were resoundingly just handled in the trenches, is that a sign that Clemson has taken a, be it small, but a regression in a step backwards? Are we to expect that this Clemson juggernaut is losing some steam?
No. I'm going to give you the quick answer on that.
Okay.
No, because I think that last year when Alabama didn't make the college football playoff, people said the same thing. Like, are we seeing the beginning of an end for Nick Saban and Alabama and this run that they've been on? It's been a remarkable run, but LSU was the best team in the league this year. They didn't even make the college football playoff. Alabama won the national championship, in 2017? They didn't win it in 2018. They lost it. And then last year they didn't even make the playoff. And here they are playing for it this year, and they're the best team in the country. This will be an upset if Ohio State wins the game. So my answer to that is no, not at all. I don't think that we're seeing any type of slide from the Tigers and things of that nature. You'll have to prove it to me. Now, do I think that Clemson is the premier program in college football? I still think it's Alabama.
It is.
I have mentioned multiple times since we started this program a year ago that I thought that Clemson was the premier program in college football alongside Alabama. I thought that those two were the team. And right now, I would say that Alabama is the premier program in college football. It's not anymore. It is Bama, because Clemson got knocked out and Bama's got a chance to win this thing again. By the way, Bama has not lost a their first game in the postseason.
Okay.
Since 2014, which was the Sugar Bowl, and that was before the college football playoff era. They've won every first game they've played in the postseason since then. Every one. All right. Now they could lose this week,
right? Because it's number 2,
right? But they've won every first game they've played in the postseason, or if they only played one game,
and that doesn't count the SEC championship, because I would almost put that as a postseason game,
essentially. Yeah. So no, I don't think it's some crazy slide. I do think Alabama is a team to beat, but no, I would refer back to the same conversations we had about Bama the last couple of years. Oh, well, they didn't win it. No, but I thought, like, going into that game, if you just listen to the audience, if you just kind of browse through social media, listen to shows, watch TV, it was like people were tired of seeing Alabama and Clemson, and they wanted to see something different. But there is also this national dislike of Notre Dame. So I don't think anybody wanted to see them there. The team that would have been like the team, like if they were in the college football playoff, they would have had America on their shoulders, would have been Texas A&M. It would have been Texas A&M because it would have been different. We've never seen them in the playoff.
We've never seen anyone but the 4 same teams.
Exactly. In Oklahoma. And but like it would have been A&M. Like if A&M could have somehow squeaked in there, people would have been pulling for A&M to win the whole shebang.
There was also a strong sentiment. Now, this may be largely ACC folks and Clemson folks who really didn't want Ohio State to win the game solely because Ohio State played 6 games in the regular season. And solely because they had this idea that this team can't possibly belong here because they only played 6 games, so knock them out. I think that was part of the motivation for Ohio State as well.
Absolutely. Well, they did what Dabo has done for a few years. They literally turned every narrative out there into it's us against the world, and let's go prove it. And they did.
Yes,
they did. Yeah, you can argue this. I mean, I disagree with Reggie a little bit. I do think that they probably have a pretty advanced system for stealing signs. There have been coaches well documented across the country who have said, look, they get them. Yeah. I don't know how they get them, but they get them.
They're definitely getting them.
These people know that. And obviously Ohio State game planned against that, but there was just a narrative going. I felt like generally when you see Ohio State in the postseason, everybody's like, God, I hope somebody beats the crap out of them. I felt like, I'm not just saying this from Carolina side, I'm saying this from what I saw. I was trying to ignore Carolina fans. Look at what everybody else is saying.
Yep.
And they were like, no, we don't want to see this again. I think it's going to be a special national championship game. We certainly look forward to talking much more about it over the next few days.
There's a chance it's going to be one of those that will be talked about for a while. Hey, if Ohio State can play at any sort of level like they just did, it's going to be fireworks.
Absolutely. And if you see Justin Fields play like that again, that'll be another motivational tactic for them.
And how healthy is Justin Fields?
Yeah, they say he's ready to go.
He's going to play. Of course he's going to play. Curious to see how healthy he is.
We are all but out of time. Thanks to Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic, senior writer, college football, for joining us in the top of the program. Wes Mitchell in hour 2, Reggie Merriweather here in hour 3, and all of you for watching and listening. Happy New Year's. Nice to be back in the saddle. Tomorrow, Gene Sapikoff and others join us, J.C. Sherbert, and many more throughout the rest of the week. We got you totally covered with the coaching changes, the college football playoff, hoops, and much, much more here on our program. For Darren, I'm Jamie. Have a marvelous Monday afternoon, and thank you for watching and listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. We'll see you tomorrow at noon.